is some guy, Rob Russo, some leftist based in Canada. I was turned on to this sick individual, and I found this.
Two, check. Two, hello. Check two. I am hearing word. This is breaking news, folks. Breaking news. I am getting word here that Baby Gronk he either rizzed up Livy or was rizzed up by Livy. It's unconfirmed at the moment about who did the rizzing, but apparently now, as a result of this, Baby Gronk is the new Drip King. So, you heard it here first. You heard it here first. This is hot off the wire, hot off the presses. Baby Gronk has been rizzed to a permanent end. This is right off the wire. Beep 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 beep. It's like I've got the little press card in the hat. Well, hello, see? Breaking news. Baby Gronk has been rizzed up by Livy. Has been declared the new Drip King. One of those guys, one of those old-timey guys. Happy you're back safely from Colorado, Lodane. Hello, Diego, as well. And thank you, Diego. I think you resubbed before the stream even started. Resubbed with Prime. 30 months of Prime from Diego, a.k.a. Comrade Social Distancing. Thank you so much, Diego, for all the support that you've shown me in this channel. Thank you, Diego. Thank you for that. I got a lunch here. It's been like, it's just staring me in the face. I gotta eat that. Baby Gronk's stock rose and crashed within 48 hours thanks to his weird and creepy dad. I mean, the whole thing, just, when there's like a 9-year-old NFL prospect or whatever it is, you know that there's a psychotic dad there behind the scenes. You know? You just know there is. Anyway, here's my lunch. Check this out. Check this out. It's hard to see. It's some mee goreng noodles. Got some dumplings. Some bok choy. Some egg. Some lao gan ma. Actually, quite a lot of lao gan ma. Lots of stuff going on in here in this lunch, and I haven't eaten today, so I'm very hungry. You can count on me. You're going to have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
Hey, can I have a bite?
Thank you, Moss, for the 27 months of Tier 1. Yes, you can have a bite. Yes, you can. Here you go. You want a dumpling? Chad, this is just for Moss World, okay? This is just for Moss World. No one get any free bites here, right? You can count on me. You're going to have good old Rob to talk you through all
Open
this.
Up. St. John forever.
You have to put it in my ear. Oh, no. You just missed out on the whole thing that I just did with the dumpling and the camera. Thank you, Praxid, for the 15 months Tier 1. Thank you, Praxid. These dumplings are really good. It's like, these dumplings are actually the Buldak brand who make that really spicy Korean ramen. They make actual dumplings as well. Threw some of those in there. About to hit the grocery store. What should I put on my shopping list? Definitely, Doc, if you don't have any already, you got to get some of that lao gan ma. Lao gan ma is going to be the most life-changing condiment ingredient. It's just like a cheat code. It's like a cooking cheat code. You just throw it into anything, and it just automatically raises the quality of whatever you're doing. And it gives it this spicy, umami, salty, crunchy addition to whatever you got going on. Where you got eggs, you got pasta, you know, ramen, soup. I don't know, whatever you can put on anything, like frying up
can
some
count on me.
chicken
You're gonna have
thighs
good
or
old
chicken
Rob
breast
to,
or whatever,
talk you
pork
through all
chops, whatever,
this.
any kind of meat.
Rob, 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 Rob.
Thank you, John. Thank you, John, for the 26 months resub at tier 2 and for everything you do for the community, John. Thank you. Thank you for that. Very kind of you. How was everyone's weekend? What was your weekend, chat? To me. Anything interesting? Fuck me. Fuck me. It was nice and rainy yesterday. Okay. Sounds kind of nice. It was quite nice here as well. Not really rainy though. It was quite sunny, blue skies, which is nice considering all the wildfire shit that we've somehow avoided the worst of. Moss World went to a tiny pride parade. That sounds cool. Johnny got his stitches out. What'd you have stitches for, Johnny? And I was happy to finally, after many months of talking about it, join the Subversive History stream on Friday. And it was tremendous. Look at the color of these. Fantastic. There are so many different colliding flavors in my mouth right now. It's really unbelievable. Pre-cancerous thing cut out of my armpit. No shit, Johnny. Glad you're okay. That sounds scary. Oh, I gotta get a napkin. I'm getting gunk all over my mitt. I was going to go out for a little walk and grab something for lunch. I was running short on time. I was trying to finish up a few errands where I started online shit that I had to do. And I'm glad it didn't. This meal is really so easy to make and it's so fantastic. You can count on me. You're gonna have good old Rob to talk you through all this. Talks to all. Thank you for the 30 months tier 1. I have a question, chat. When I'm sitting here eating, like, is it better that I just throw on a video or something while I do that? I mean, I know, like we mentioned, there's people on audio only. I'm sitting here just like chewing silently. It's real. I don't know if it's very engaging content. I don't know if it's very engaging content for me to just be sitting here silently chewing while a few dozen people are watching. But on a best of video of you eating, that would actually be very meta. Yeah. Just put the egg licking clip on repeat. Did you talk about Cornel West's goofy ass presidential run? We've definitely been talking about it. We talked about it on the Insurgents podcast last week. We've been talking about it on here. I'm sure we're going to continue talking about it as the process moves forward. I'm almost finished. Almost finished. And yeah, we talked about Cornel West. We're going to keep talking about it. I think it's just I think that you have to kind of walk a line when you talk about that, because Cornel West, regardless of like what's going on with this presidential campaign and the People's Party and all this stuff, is still someone that I have respect for. Someone who's like a really powerful voice for social and racial and economic justice, anti-war. Has a lot of really positive contributions and a lot of really like important, I think, things to say about the various issues that are facing America and the world. And I think overall, it's still good to have maybe someone with that voice out there as part of this process. But I think we can also acknowledge that and not anyone fall into this trap of been like, but it's gonna hurt Biden, it's gonna help Trump. Like, we're not gonna do that also. So I think we should talk about that. But yeah, like Praxid's saying, I think pointing out the weirdness and issues there is with this whole People's Party, which Cornel West seemed to know nothing about. Like, when he was asked about it, he really doesn't seem to have any fucking clue of like what this party is that he's involved with. So yeah, we're going to continue talking about it with the kind of nuance that you've come to expect from me. I'm almost finished my noodles. So, Lodain, in Colorado, you were doing a music thing? Is that about right? You weren't going to the NBA Finals? The Laugan Mai used is the kind with peanuts. So there's little tiny spicy little peanuts there in the bottom. Wow. Okay. That was absolutely fantastic. Is he going to contact the Green Party for more ballot access? I don't know. And like, this is the question we were asking. You know, what is the People's Party bringing to this situation. You know, what's the actual benefit of being affiliated with them? It helps them more than the actual affiliation with the People's Party helps Cornel West. If anything, he gives them a kind of like unearned credibility, and the People's Party diminishes his credibility. Watching the Subversive History stream and the finals on a projector outside was great. That's amazing. That's such a funny mix of content to watch on a outside projector, Dakadoon. I was actually, when I was on the Subversive History stream, which I admitted at the time, I don't have a problem admitting it here, I was actually watching the finals in another window on my screen. But of course, that didn't stop me from contributing my razor sharp analysis, as you all know. Oh, that's very satisfying. Well, I'll come back another time. I'll come back another time, Johnny. Like I said, it's more just a matter of like parenting stuff. But is what makes that kind of tricky. That's why I do my streams during the day. What is the TRRS official stance on the Reddit blackout? I mean, it is pretty lame that like Reddit is basically rendering its most popular unofficial apps just like totally useless. Like all the most popular, most used Android and iPhone apps are just shutting down now because Reddit is making it basically impossible. Excuse me. Which is stupid, you know? It's the same thing that it's stupid that Twitter, it's making its API so difficult to access. Is there a TRRS Reddit? No, there's not. There's not a TRRS subreddit that I know of. It's called R Grog Enjoyers. Wow. Okay. Okay. I just don't know if there's enough. Is there enough crossover between TRRS regular viewers or listeners and Reddit users? I just don't know if there's enough action, even if a subreddit would really be like delivering all that much. Maybe, I don't know. Cornell complimented DeSantis. He's either completely out of touch or grifting. It makes no sense to compliment an opponent, and if Trump is a neo-fascist, how is DeSantis not also? What did he say about DeSantis? I guess it depends on what he said. But you're right. If he's suggesting that DeSantis is somehow like more or less of a neo-fascist than Trump, obviously that's silly. But I don't think he's grifting, honestly. I think he's just like in space. I just don't think he knows what's going on. Yeah, Discord is better for it. I can't imagine spending any more time on Reddit than absolutely necessary. I basically only use Reddit for like NBA and Toronto Raptors. And sometimes, like, the Squared Circle, the pro wrestling subreddit. Excuse me. DeSantis is a proven torturer and war criminal. Okay, so DeSantis is... Okay. Let me see this. Let's see this here. Defending the Western canon. Is that what DeSantis is doing? Does DeSantis know anything about the Western canon? Promoting the Western canon should only be a Republican talking point. And I can't read this article. I don't know. I think when DeSantis is right in the middle of this, like, almost historic level of, like, book banning and censorship in Florida right now, maybe it's best just to avoid complimenting him. Or finding some, like, bending over backwards to find some kind of left angle to suggest that it's all right. I don't know. Maybe you can just avoid that. That's what I would do. That's what I would do personally. Ugh. But we have to appeal to the right. That's right. Once we make a case to them that, you know, we also agree with their protection of the Western classical literature canon, they'll get right on board with our program, because that's what it's about for them, right? That's what it's about for them. That's all. That stuff's very important to them. Oh yeah, yeah. You know? Did you see Prax Ben got Eddie Liger fired from his job? I don't know who Prax Ben is. No, I didn't see that though. This is what happens when Eddie... And listen, I will always have a soft spot for Eddie. Eddie talks about a lot of important stuff that I think that I agree with and that I think is really important to educate people around. This is why you don't get involved in this debate bullshit. This is why you don't get involved in debating the Voshes or the Prax Bens or the whoever it is. It's why you just don't do it. Not only did Eddie not change anyone's mind, not only did Eddie bring no one into that analysis or no one into the program, but then he has like personal consequences from doing it in the first place. Just don't debate these people, okay? Just don't debate them. Nothing is gained. Maybe you'll get a bigger platform. Maybe it might grow your platform ever so slightly, you know? Maybe I would be... Yeah, you're saying a jank debated Destiny. And I said to myself, I got it in time. Maybe it would have been good for my platform to jump on the fucking Destiny stream that time when he was talking to me about that. But like, no fucking interest in doing that. Zero interest in doing that. If I'm gonna grow this community and grow my influence on here, I'm gonna do so by just sitting right here, anchoring myself here, and you know, continuing to talk about the analysis that I think is correct and the lens through which I think we need to view these things. And people can come to me, okay? I'll be right here. I'll be right here saying the same shit that I was saying 2 years from now. I'll be here, that I was saying 2 years ago. 2 years from now, I'll still be here, and hopefully people will come to me. That's my stance. And I'm not going to be debating any of these fools. Any of these clowns. Hey, Lasu, what's up? Your real guest interviews and features are far more interesting and important than any fucking debate. Yeah, I agree. I agree, Lodane. It's like, I feel like I get so much more out of just having someone on here that I agree with about things. Or maybe, but not everything, but about some things. And just having like a conversation with them. And having them, you know, educate me and us about things that I'm not as clear on. I mean, it's just like, it's so much more interesting and valuable than if I was on some debate going, but no, you said this. And they have all these debate tactics or whatever. You know? That's what I just did. That's my impression of what a debate sounds like. That's what when I put it on, that's what it sounds like to me. What happened with Eddie's, what happened, like, that he actually said, like, what happened with his job, though? Like, what's the tea on that? What's the tea? Anyone got any tea? Just one more debate, bro. Then this will be resolved once and for all. Well, and Eddie, as someone who has like read theory, should probably should know first and foremost that all these things that we're debating have already been settled, you know, decades or centuries ago. And that if someone doesn't want to do the reading, they're not going to listen to you because of your debate. You know, when you debate about like whatever basic analysis of history or whatever subject it is, if these people are still ignorant despite all the answers being out there and available for them, readily available, you know, if they're not, I'm just reading this tweet here. So he got fired from his job at the university, I guess, talking to athletes. But you know what I mean? If they haven't grasped these things now, you're not going to convince them with your debate. Never in the history of anyone debating anyone has someone on the other side said, that's actually a pretty good point. That's actually a good point. Maybe I should rethink some of my preconceived notions about this subject. Maybe I've been led astray. Maybe I've been led astray, and maybe I've been actually leading others astray with my incorrect understanding and analysis. No one has ever said that or done that. And I also don't think there's people in the audience going, I've never thought of it that way. When you tune in, when you're a fan of whatever like debater and someone debates them, no one in the audience is there going like, wow, this is making a lot of sense here. I'm going to switch over to the other side here. I came in supporting one side, and I'm going to switch. Like, no. It's never happened. It has never happened. I think we all learned something today. Yeah, no, we did not. No. We learned nothing whatsoever, actually. Just a bunch of sickos licking the glass. There we go. I walked away from the Zizek-Peterson debate still hating both of them. Well, even like the main takeaway of the Zizek-Peterson debate, Peterson doesn't actually know what he's talking about. He actually has no idea what Marxism is, you know? That was the takeaway. But like, who went in there? You know, it's not like any of Peterson's fans saw that and that was their takeaway. You know? And most people who like followed Peterson already knew that he didn't know what he was talking about. It's not that hard to figure this out. I guess that made it abundantly clear and really just totally, completely exposed that as being the truth. Maybe there were some people that were like, "Well, this Jordan Peterson guy is really dumb. I thought he was smart, but he's actually very dumb." But I don't know, though. I don't know. Chug that vodka. It's just a big water bottle. I don't know what's the confusion here. It's just water. I've actually been I've been very hydrated. I've been really making a point to like drink more water. I keep filling this up and just sticking it in the fridge. 1.5 liters. Very refreshing. Very hydrating to be chugging down 1.5 liters of water at any given time. My theory is that when people debate, they're actually showing you who they are closer in, though, to not farther. I think there are some typos in there, but I get your meaning, risk inverse, but closer in thought. Okay. Closer in thought, not farther. Yeah, I think that's part of it too. And I mean Zizek as well. It's like you've got Peterson, the anti-Marxist, the ignorant anti-Marxist, and then you've got Zizek, who, like, what does he call himself? He calls himself like a something Stalinist or something. But he's like, when you actually dig into his thoughts on like class analysis, you know, often he's very anti-Marxist as well. So probably correct as well there that they both have similar ideas about socialism, even though they're coming at them from different directions, maybe. Zizek took Ned money to publish propaganda in the past. Yeah, Zizek is an anti-communist. That's the thing. It's like you've got the left anti-communist versus the right anti-communist, and Zizek and Peterson. And like I said, maybe the one thing about that debate that you could say is that Peterson was exposed for having no fucking idea of what he's talking about. But who didn't know that already? Just don't debate. Just don't debate. Never debate. This one trick will drive the biggest clout sharks crazy. Never debate. Lenin was a debater, but it was before the internet. I think Lenin gets a pass. You know? Because I think the path of destruction that Lenin carved amongst his like ideological enemies, we can still learn from that today. You know, he did that so we don't have to do it anymore. I think that's the main thing. It had to happen in, you know, the 1917. It doesn't need to happen now in 2023. You know what I mean? Prax Ben has been trying to get a bunch of people on the left to debate him. Who the fuck is Prax Ben? Do I want to know about this? Prax Ben, libertarian, state disliker. So he's debating Esha on whether or not the Soviet Union was good. Nonsense. Why would anyone spend time doing that? Jesus. Let us never think of this person again. I just learned of this person's existence and I already regret it. I already regret looking into it. hot take, the Soviet Union was good. I agree. What would be the point of debating USSR? Well, I think it's important to an extent. I don't debate about this, but I do try and like talk about it and educate people about it, because I do think getting a better picture of history, and also just like the idea of pushing back on this like ultra leftist idea about the USSR. It wasn't socialist. It wasn't socialist because the workers just didn't know the means of production. This very facile kind of like simplistic understanding of both the USSR and what socialism is, which discounts all the amazing contributions of the USSR, which discounts that it was this incredible revolutionary project that like really did come close to destabilizing and overthrowing this like extremely powerful imperialist bloc, and the fact that they were actually like fighting against that, supporting revolutionary struggles and anti-colonial struggles. You know? Yeah, it's about, that's what I mean. It's hard to change minds when people have anti-communism rooted into their brains. I agree. That's why I don't debate about it though, but I still think it is worth talking about. We've seen how much history has been revised over the last several decades, so I do think it's worthwhile to talk about these this revisionism and, you know, how that has worked and who it's benefited. The only way you should ever consider debating is if you're offered stupid money to. And even then, there would be a whole whack of other factors to consider. I guess so. I guess maybe my principles about never debating would go out the window. If the price was right. Everybody's got a price. Ha 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 ha. Even me. Even me. But I'm not too worried about that happening. I'm not too worried about being put in that position. Johnny Dialectically can absolutely be bought. Listen, I got kids to feed, okay? I got kids to feed. That doesn't mean it's going to be cheap. I bought some art today. I bought some art. This is like, I don't want to get into the cost here, but probably the most I've spent on art. I have another wall that I needed to put something on, but I am really, really happy with this art that I bought. I bought a piece by El Lissitzky. I have a lot of like Soviet art in here. I have like a lot of propaganda art, and this is kind of like that. But El Lissitzky's a really interesting artist and did these illustrations for this early Soviet era children's book called The Story of Two Squares. Just seeing if I can show it to you here. It's not loading the image. That's good. That's great. Let me just show you this here. Yeah, it's really cool. I got this is the piece. This is the art piece I just got. It's called The Story of Two Squares, and it's about like these two competing squares which fall to Earth, which represent the competing social orders there. The artist is Eliezer Lizitsky. It's pretty cool. I don't know. It was just my birthday. I probably shouldn't be spending money on art, but, you know, I wanted to maybe do something nice for myself. I did need to cover up another wall here. I did a little research. Really, really interesting artist, and I'm looking forward to getting that. No, it was not Ted Kaczynski. No. I did not buy anything by Ted Kaczynski. What site are you finding this stuff on? There's one good site I got a really cool movie poster from, and I ended up getting this as well, which is greatbigcanvas.com. I've gotten a couple cool things there, and you can get them like the matte prints, so you don't have to frame it or anything. Like you can get some really nice pieces there, and it's not cheap. There's often discounts. But a bunch of good stuff on there. So do we have anything else going on we need to chat about? I guess there's the... Tell me why I should not buy this shirt. How do you... I'm not going to tell you why you shouldn't buy it. That's a good shirt. You should buy that. I encourage you to buy it. Tyler Harrow suiting up tonight. Is he actually suiting up? That's interesting. I don't know if it's going to make much of a difference. Interested to see, though. Can you folks just like hang on for one moment? I'm going to put on like a video or something. I'm going to put on a video here for you. I got to go take care of something. I just realized I fucked something up. I want to talk about these the protests that have been going on outside school boards that have recognized Pride Month. This has been going on in America. It's been happening. It was in Ottawa on Friday, and I kind of regretted not talking about it on Friday a little bit. We're going to talk about that. Let me just go ahead and throw on a video here so I can do something really quick.
U.S. spy agencies.
I got a Ben Norton video here about this like ridiculous story about this Chinese base in Cuba. Did you just accept a debate invite from Praxpan? No, I did not. Let's just watch this video. Give me one moment so I can just deal with something that I just realized I fucked up badly. And we will talk about more serious subjects in just a moment. Let me throw this on, and I'll be back in just like 5 minutes.
To be very afraid of China, and they want you to believe that the Chinese Communist Party is spying on everything that you say. Anonymous U.S. intelligence officials used the media this June to spread a story claiming that the Chinese government is building a massive spy base in Cuba, 100 miles from Florida, and that Beijing plans to spy on the United States. There is one tiny problem with this story. It is false. There is no evidence whatsoever, and the U.S. Department of Defense, the Pentagon, has come out publicly and said the story is not accurate. It is false. This is the latest example of a series of false stories that are laundered through the mainstream media by U.S. intelligence officials, especially the CIA, and they use this story, which is later proven to be false, in order to advance U.S. foreign policy interests, and in particular, in order to demonize countries like China and Cuba and Russia and other targets of the U.S. State Department. In the past few years, we've seen numerous examples of these fake stories that go viral and are shared all over the media. Another prominent example includes Havana syndrome, the claim that has been completely debunked that supposedly Cuba has been attacking U.S. spies and diplomats with radio wave weapons. Another fake story that was debunked is the claim by the CIA that Russia was paying the Taliban bounties in order to kill U.S. soldiers during the war in Afghanistan. I'm going to come back to those stories later on. In fact, one of the co-founders of the CIA, Frank Wisner, famously said that the Central Intelligence Agency has contacts all across the media, and it knows how to play the media like a musical instrument that he referred to as a mighty Wurlitzer, which is a kind of old musical instrument. And this was the CIA acknowledging that they could use the media to manipulate public opinion, to push the public in certain directions, to manufacture consent for war. And here we see yet another example of that.
China is in talks with Cuba to establish a spy base on the island nation and just 100 miles south of the U.S.
China is building a U.S. spying facility just next door to us in Cuba.
China and Cuba have now reached a secret agreement, we are told, for China to establish an electronic facility on the island, which would allow Chinese intelligence services to scoop up electronic communications throughout the southeastern U.S.
This all started on June 8th when the Wall Street Journal published an article titled "Cuba to Host Secret Chinese Spy Base Focusing on U.S." The article claimed, without a shred of evidence, quote, "China and Cuba have reached a secret agreement for China to establish an electronic eavesdropping facility on the island in a brash new geopolitical challenge by Beijing to the U.S." So the article frames this as a Chinese threat as part of the new Cold War. And in order to spread this fake story, the Wall Street Journal cited U.S. officials familiar with highly classified intelligence. So we can't fact check who they are. We don't know what their background is. They quoted anonymous U.S. officials who said that China had agreed to pay cash-strapped Cuba several $1 billion to allow it to build the eavesdropping station, and that the two countries had reached an agreement in principle. Now note how ambiguous the language is. Supposedly, China and Cuba agreed in principle. So they're acknowledging that there's actually not an agreement. And this story has been proven to be false. Just a few hours after this Wall Street Journal exclusive bombshell report came out, Reuters quoted the Pentagon, that is the U.S. Department of Defense, saying that it was false. It quoted a Pentagon spokesperson who is actually named, who's not anonymous, Brigadier General Patrick Ryder, who said, quote, "I can tell you based on the information that we have that this is not accurate, that we are not aware of China and Cuba developing a new type of spy station. In terms of that particular report, no, it's not accurate." In fact, after the article was published in the Wall Street Journal, the newspaper later updated its article with a quote from John Kirby, who is the spokesman for the U.S. National Security Council. And he said, quote, "This report is not accurate." Now, keep in mind that John Kirby also comes from the U.S. Department of Defense, the Pentagon. He was previously the Pentagon's press secretary, and he is also debunking this report. What does this show? It means that U.S. spy agencies are the ones spreading this false claim in order to demonize China, whereas the U.S. military recognizes that there's no evidence, it's false, and they're the ones coming out and trying to debunk it.
What is your reaction to this?
They've really got their shit together. My main takeaway from this story is that I think it's highly unlikely that China is opening a secret Chinese spy base spying on the U.S. through Cuba. Just as all these other stories about China and the secret police stations and all the other bullshit that we constantly hear, the spy balloons. Just as all the other stories are often complete bullshit in and of itself. But I think they should. I think they should open a secret spy base on Cuba. I mean, it's not even secret if they're talking about it on the news. They should open a base on Cuba. That would be perfectly fine for them to do. Is Cuba not allowed to make a deal with China to open a base on the island? I don't see why not. So that's my takeaway. No, I don't think it's happening. I think the stories are bullshit. But if it was happening, I think it would be cool and I would agree with it and approve of it. That's my main takeaway. Anyway, sorry again. I just had to go for a few moments, folks. I think I gotta get remedicated again soon because, like, I keep on having some bad ADHD moments and forgetting things that I'm supposed to do and fucking shit up, which always makes me feel really bad. And I didn't realize my music was playing at the same time. Sorry about that. I'm really fucking covering myself in glory today. I actually had an interview that I was supposed to be part of at noon. And as soon as I started this, like, as soon as I opened Twitter on the other screen, I was like, oh yeah, I was supposed to do that like an hour and a half ago and just didn't do it. Just completely forgot. I was supposed to do an interview with Jordan for the Insurgents podcast and just totally fucked it up. I thought it was tonight. And I didn't realize that we had agreed to do an early one. And I completely just forgot. So I'm feeling great about that. I always feel great about myself in those moments, don't you? Know the feeling? You know the feeling when you like forget something important that you were supposed to do afterwards, after it's too late? And you're like, oh yeah, I totally messed that up. Man. You'd think by now maybe I could learn to like put things in a schedule or a calendar. Are you using a calendar? I mean, sometimes obviously I could do it, but not enough. It's clearly not enough. There's too many things where it's just like, I don't need to put that in a calendar. Obviously I'll remember. Why would I need to put that in a calendar? It's very easy. Very easy to remember, but I don't. But yes, I should be doing the same thing. Well, I forgot to go to a whole ass concert a couple months ago. Oh, wow. Yeah, I've had 2 or 3 or maybe 4 incidents like this now over the last couple of months. My Brad Bane is really coming through. Just doesn't want the CIA reading his schedule. I mean, they're already reading the DMs, so they must know already. I'm the most disorganized person that fucked me up in university, and I'm 41 now and still struggling, and it's awful and just makes everyone else angry. God. I still have flashbacks to when I had a job like in an ad agency, and I just like, I became so depressed doing this job that it became like I almost just like couldn't function, and that kind of shit kept happening to me. And at one point I fucked off and forgot in a call that I was supposed to do a conference call with some client, and like my kind of boss, but we were really friendly, like we were like super cool guy who was always very chill with me, but like actually got mad. He got mad about it, and I still have like flashbacks to it sometimes. The awkward and uncomfortable meeting after that. I still think about that. 10 years later. Oh. Let me know if you want help getting something like Notion going for your work calendar. I mean, that sounds like it'd be helpful, but it's like it shouldn't be necessary, Lodane. Like, I shouldn't need you helping me out with this. I should have the ability to just, like, it's literally, I can just talk to the fucking Google device in my home. You know? It's really easy to do, and I still don't do it. Still have nightmares missing a test or paper in college. Yeah. Well, thankfully, I somehow managed to still graduate university. I don't know how. Like, in retrospect, I have no idea how. But definitely missed a lot of papers and a lot of... I just squeaked by. I just squeaked by. Man, you can count on me. You're going to have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
If you think that's bad, I've spent 6 months forgetting to cancel this sub. Kappa Pride.
Cauldron of Bats, thank you very much for the 6 months of Tier 1. And even though I cheer for everyone to overcome their bad brain symptoms, I hope you continue forgetting. I hope you continue forgetting indefinitely. And... Cauldron of Bats, if you continue to forget for the next 18 months, you too will have a highly elite, highly exclusive 24-month, 2-year golden, shimmering golden 24-month TRRS sub badge. So it'll be one of those happy accidents. Yeah, I don't get as much bad flashbacks to university. You can count on I definitely get bad flashbacks to certain stuff with my job from 10 years ago.
Just graduated university, Rob.
Hell yeah, Ben Bang Boom. Thanks for the 19 months of Tier 1, and congratulations to you. Congratulations, that's a huge accomplishment. Wonderful. We love it. Meanwhile, I'm 34 and trying to get into university. I would kind of like to go back. I wish there was like I wish you could just like decide to go get an education and just have your basic services paid for. That'd be kind of nice, wouldn't it? I think if I went to university now, I would get way more out of it than I did 20 years ago. You know? I would probably be way better at it. It does sound fake and made up, yeah. You get a little grant or a subsidy or whatever. That'd be nice. Lifelong learning shall be free following the friendship triangle revolution. Exactly. Exactly. Danger Dave Ball, what is up? Hello. Investing in your population for job training and skills? No, bleed them for money. That's how it works. Yes. Should be as inaccessible as possible. Damn it.
This is some guy, Rob Russo, some leftist based in Canada. I was turned on to this sick individual, and I found this.
Hello, Dan. Dan Simpson raid. Raiders, get in. Get in, Raiders. Thank you for the raid, Dan. I appreciate it. How was the Dan Simpson show today? I'm Rob, Dan Simpson Raiders. I'm Rob Rousseau. Hello. It's nice to have you. Thank you for joining us. Please smash the follow button. If you have not already done so, smash that follow button. Hello, Rad Left Ad. Here's a question for you. Dan Chatters. Do you think China is operating a secret Cuban spy base? Yes or no? And if yes, do you approve or disapprove?
You can count on me. You're going to have good
Of
old
this
Rob
tactic.
to talk you through all this.
I fucking hope so.
Thank you, Ross Publica, for the 9 months of Tier 1. Stream baby. Thank you, Ross. I hope so too. And like I was saying, I don't think they are. I don't think they are actually operating this base, but I think they should. If they wanted to, I think they should be allowed and that it would be cool. A secret Cuban milking factory. Oh, man. Yeah, I hope they are as well. Not so much with the milking factory, but I hope they do open the base. We can get some Chinese-made Cuban cigars. Not a big cigar guy, personally. It's where China manufactures their Havana Syndrome weapons, of course. It's right there. We're through the looking glass here, people. I saw President Xi in Cuba, and he was standing on the beach holding a comically large antenna in the general direction of Florida. And then one of the babies looked at me. Right? That would be great. It's the thing about President Xi. He gets his hands dirty. He's not just ordering the spy bases to be built. He's out there doing the work. He's aiming the antennas at the United States to intercept their radio programs and television programs. That's why I respect him, you know? He's not just pointing his finger and telling people what they need to do. He's out there doing what needs to be done himself. Communism is when China takes over Cuba. Well, I don't think China would take over Cuba. If they did, it would be pretty cool if they started building infrastructure in Cuba. If Cuba joined the Belt and Road Initiative,
You can count
that
on
would be
me.
pretty
You're gonna
cool.
have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
Anyway, thanks for helping me feel slightly less depressed and unhinged, as always.
Sean, thank you. Thank you for the 28 months of Tier 1, Sean. I appreciate that. I appreciate you, Sean. Thank you. They probably got a base there where they keep foreign military combatants for enhanced interrogation. Exactly. That's only the kind of thing a sick, authoritarian, violent society like them would do that kind of a thing. You know? If they had this military base black site where they brought people who hadn't been convicted of a crime even and kept them there for decades, force feeding them sometimes when they went on hunger strike, overseeing torture. Imagine what kind of a sick totalitarian dystopia you'd have to be to engage in that kind of behavior. Disgusting. Absolutely disgusting. you know? It would be really interesting, actually, if like, I don't know if there's ever been any talk about that. I know there was like the idea of China being involved in like helping Cuba to and other, you know, nations to overcome the sanctions and the blockade that they're under. It would be pretty interesting if they did formalize that kind of arrangement more. If China did move into Cuba and started building or like revamping their infrastructure, you know? I think that would be really great if that actually did happen. Anyway, let's look more at this Ben Norton clip here.
Look, I've seen that press report. It's not accurate. What I can tell you is that we have been concerned since day one of this administration about China's influence activities around the world, certainly in this hemisphere and in this region. We're watching this very, very closely, and we will, and we have, and will continue to take steps to mitigate any potential threat that those activities might pose, so that we can make sure, and we're positive that we can continue to defend this nation.
You're saying it's not accurate that they're planning this?
I'm saying we've seen the report. It's not accurate. We're focused on making sure that we can mitigate any threats.
That's just Biden doing cover for his Chinese.
Now, you would think that if the Pentagon came out publicly and said this story is false, that the rest of the media would not want to touch this false story. But you would be wrong.
You would think. You're
Every
right.
other mainstream U.S. media outlet in the United
China
States
Joe is what they
jumped
call
on
him.
this report, and they published their own articles trying to confirm the unproven claims of these U.S. spy officials. On June 9th, CNN published its own article, once again quoting anonymous spies, titled "Cuba Gives China Permission to Build Spying."
You see how much like these anonymous sources in CSIS or the CIA or whatever have been absolutely integral to promoting these stories. And you got to wonder what's up with that, right? We've talked endlessly on this show about the whole like anonymous sources within CSIS and how they've promoted this endless like Chinese political interference story. Chinagate in Canada is being promoted by these anonymous sources within the intelligence community, and you see the same thing happening here. Is this internal factions disagreeing? It could be. Is it these spy agencies engaging in kind of black propaganda, but then having this kind of like plausible deniability? Is that it? You know? Are these leaks? Are these like unofficial leaks? Or is this more of a deliberate strategy to get these stories out there while also trying to maintain the sense of a balance or credibility? You know? Is that it? I don't know. It's definitely kind of interesting though. This seems to keep happening.
Facility on island, U.S. intel says. Like the Wall Street Journal report, CNN quoted, quote, "two sources familiar with the intelligence." So once again, unnamed people in U.S. spy agencies. Politico did the exact same thing.
You'd think they'd let it cook a bit. Well, I guess that's like they're counting on their assets in the media to follow through with the story regardless of their like spin on it. Because like Ben's pointing out, they did push back on this story, but it didn't actually stop any of these news outlets from running with the story in the first place.
They published a report titled "China Seeking to Spy on the U.S. from a Base in Cuba." And once again, they quoted two anonymous senior U.S. officials, and they said that the officials were granted anonymity to discuss an extremely sensitive intelligence matter. Now, note how these other mainstream media outlets are not simply repeating what the Wall Street Journal said. They are using their own sources in U.S. intelligence agencies to confirm this false story that was debunked by the Pentagon. And of course, their unconfirmed claims were also regurgitated by other mainstream corporate media outlets like The Guardian over in Britain, or CBS News, who said the prospect of Chinese spy base in Cuba unsettles Washington. How scary. Cuba forcefully condemned this report, saying it was false, and the Cuban Deputy Foreign Minister, Carlos Fernandez de Cosio, said that it is, quote, totally untrue and unfounded, and said that it was, quote, promoted with the malicious intention to justify the unprecedented reinforcement of the economic blockade, destabilization, and the aggression against Cuba. He added that the Cuban government rejects any, quote, foreign military presence in Latin America and the Caribbean, including the numerous military bases and troops of the U.S., and especially the military base that illegally occupies a portion of our national territory in the province of Guantanamo. China also made it very clear that this story is completely false, and it's part of a U.S. strategy of information warfare.
And China Joe's helping him. Unbelievable.
The spokesman for China's foreign ministry, Wang Wenbin, said, quote, spreading rumors and slander is a common tactic of the U.S.
They've really,
You can count on me.
They've really taken the gloves off, haven't they? In their foreign ministry. They're not exactly trying to be subtle anymore with their criticisms of the U.S. whenever these stories start circulating. They're not really too concerned with ruffling feathers or whatever it is. What are they going to spy on? Our crumbling infrastructure? Well, that's a good question. It's a good question. Like we were asked with that spy balloon, what are they actually looking at here? What are they looking at that they don't already know about? Diego, thank you very much for the 2 gifted subs. Thank you, Diego. I really, really appreciate all the support.
And he pointed out, quote, the U.S. has illegally occupied the Guantanamo Bay base in Cuba for a long time, engaged in ulterior activities, and imposed an embargo on Cuba for more than 60 years. He added that the U.S., quote, should reflect on itself, stop interfering in Cuba's internal affairs under the banner of freedom, democracy, and human rights, and immediately cancel its commercial and financial blockade of Cuba. So this raises the question, why would U.S. intelligence officials spread a false story that even the Pentagon acknowledged is not true? Of course, we can't be 100% sure because U.S. spy agencies are notoriously secretive, but we can speculate based on history, based on past evidence of U.S. spy agencies doing this kind of thing, that it is aimed, of course, one, at simply demonizing China and Cuba.
Vlad, you pointed out, but it's farcical, right? The whole hand wringing, just as all the hand wringing about China's aggression or whatever. So whether it's the spy balloon, the base, their aggressiveness in the South China Sea, it's all just describing our own behavior and our own activity and accusing them of doing the very things that we do, or even accusing them of doing extremely mild versions of the things that we do, or with their war on terror policies, the Xinjiang stuff, or anything, the colonization, all that bullshit, cultural genocide, all the accusations. It's not just this, every single accusation is just, you're pointing the finger and then you got 3 fingers pointing back at you. It's always an admission. Every time. The sad thing is that people buy it. China's investing in people and solving real problems. In contrast, you can see the United States for what it really is, a hostile and paranoid force trying to maintain control of global capital. Yeah, and we frame them as being some power-starved, power-hungry, wannabe hegemon, from our perch as the global hegemon, or the lackey, the imperial lackey of the hegemon, as Canada is. No, it is exhausting, and they're just completely devoid of shame as well. It's just completely ridiculous.
The tactic that spy agencies often use, it's known as gray propaganda, that they're using as part of information warfare. But it looks like it also could be an attempt to try to sabotage any potential attempts at improving diplomatic relations between China and the United States. In fact, just 2 days before this false story in the Wall Street Journal came out, there are reports that the U.S. Secretary of State, Antony Blinken, was planning a visit to China within the upcoming weeks. Some figures in the Joe Biden administration have been concerned that the escalating tensions between the US and China are dangerous and want to try to slightly normalize diplomatic relations. But now with these stories saying that China is spying on the US...
You're pointing the finger and you've got 3 blood-soaked, gnarled fingers pointing back at you with 10 toes ankle-deep in a mass grave. It's another way of looking at it. Very poetic. How, as Jeremy Irons said in Die Hard with a Vengeance, how colorful. Hedgimon, the latest Pokemon character. That's good.
US in Cuba, well, they might have to cancel this diplomatic trip. In fact, in the interview that MSNBC did with the National Security Council spokesman John Kirby, who denied the report, MSNBC showed how it's dutifully playing the role that the CIA likely wants it to play, and MSNBC implied strongly that Antony Blinken should cancel his trip to China.
And with Secretary Blinken reportedly heading to China in the near future, within weeks, let's say, could this be a turning point? Could this set the stage for President Biden and President Xi to finally have that phone call that in February the president said was going to happen soon?
Well, again, I don't have anything to announce with respect to the Secretary's travel. We do expect that he'll be able to get over to Beijing again. That's what we want. And that visit may be followed by...
It's going to be interesting to cover
leaders,
that. It does seem to happen every time with the Blinken China trips. That's true, yeah. And again, you wonder if that has anything to do with, like, if there's a rogue faction of the intelligence community trying to sabotage that, any idea of having diplomacy, whether this is all part of the plan. It's kind of interesting to speculate about, but it's unclear, isn't it?
Want to get those lines of communication back open. That was the whole purpose of Secretary Blinken's desire to go in the first place. So we'll see where that takes us. So we certainly hope it will be positive and constructive, and we'll get these lines of communication back open.
Something very similar happened back in February. You might remember that there was this big media manufactured scandal about a Chinese balloon that was over the United States, and U.S. officials later admitted that that balloon was likely a weather balloon that was blown off course. However, the U.S. military spent millions of dollars shooting down that balloon and then later several other balloons, one of which was later reported to actually belong to a hobbyist club called the Northern Illinois Bottle Cap Balloon Brigade, and it probably cost around $12. However, what was the impact of that? It drastically escalated the propaganda drive against China, demonizing China among the US public, manufacturing consent for more aggression against China, making the North American people afraid of China, supposedly spying on them. And it also had the impact of pressuring Secretary of State Antony Blinken to cancel the trip that he had planned to China, which of course prevents the possibility of any normalization of diplomatic relations between the US and China. In fact, something quite similar happened back in 2020 when US spy agencies spread a false story known as Bountygate. The New York Times took the lead in this information warfare campaign in a report titled "Russia Secretly Offered..."
Because like Afghan militants didn't have enough reason to be targeting U.S. troops in Afghanistan in the war that was going on. The Afghan war that went on for 20 years about. The Afghan militants, they just weren't convinced that they needed to start shooting at Americans until those devious Russians were in there. Until those devious Russians came in and started offering these bounties. Then they were like, okay, I guess we'll have to fight back against these troops. No, they needed that extra motivation.
Afghan militants' bounties to kill U.S. troops, intelligence says. The New York Times quoted anonymous American intelligence officials who have concluded that a Russian military intelligence unit secretly offered bounties to Taliban-linked militants for killing coalition forces in Afghanistan, including targeting American troops. Now, this story was clearly ridiculous from the beginning because The US had been militarily occupying Afghanistan for 19 years as of 2020. Why would the Taliban need to be bribed in order to kill US soldiers? Clearly, I mean, they're occupying their homeland. They don't need to be bribed by a secretive Russian military intelligence unit. But the goal was very clear. Just a few days after this false story was spread all across the media, the US Congress, that is the House of Representatives Armed Service Committee, voted to prevent the withdrawal of US troops from Afghanistan. So the information warfare campaign was successful.
It became a big part of the whole Russiagate scandal as well. There were so many libs talking about Trump. Trump is he loves Putin and Russia, even though all of Trump's foreign policy goes against this very idea. Like I talked about in 2019 in that podcast episode you were listening to the other day, trying to overthrow Venezuela, targeting Iran's political leaders, arming Ukraine. Those are just 3. Bombing Syria. Those are 4 examples of Donald Trump's foreign policy that went directly against what the Russians supposedly want, which renders the whole idea of Trump being some like Russian plant or Russian stooge completely preposterous to begin with. But then that became like part of that story, right? Trump loves Putin so much, and while Russia is paying Afghans to target U.S. troops, wow, oh my gosh. Completely is very silly. Very, very silly. Because people believe this. Because really, like, as literally centuries of propaganda can tell us now, if you just like blame the Russians for something, there's a receptive audience in the West to listen to it. And that goes back even beyond the advent of the Soviet Union. Like it was even prior to that. In the Victorian era, all the same shit was still going on. The Great Game in Afghanistan and in, competing interests with the British Empire in India and stuff as well. They were always blaming the Russians for spreading propaganda in India, getting the locals all riled up against the British overseers. They would blame the Russians for the fact that the Indians were starting to get upset over the multiple centuries of colonization that were taking place, as well as all the theft and exploitation that was part of that. It's been going on way longer than just the Soviet Union, but it's been happening for centuries. Basically, you can just if your empire is doing something and there's some kind of backlash for it, or there's some kind of consequences for it, you just blame the Russians. And there's plenty of people that are going to be receptive to that. They're going to listen to it. Did you see the author who postponed their book because it's set in Russia? No, I didn't. I didn't see that. That's funny though. I'm helping. Meanwhile, we were actually just dumping pallets of money out of AC-130s, not to kill American troops, but paying and training them back in the 70s and 80s to kill Soviets. Once again, the accusation is an admission of guilt. You're just accusing them of doing the very thing that you yourself have done. I mean, even you're talking about, this bounty gate, the idea that Russia's paying bounties to kill Americans, which is this like world-stopping, terrible thing that's been uncovered. Meanwhile, you've got like Lindsey Graham and the United States government funding and arming Ukrainians, and Lindsey Graham's openly saying like it's to kill Russians. It's to kill like they're just doing it right out in the open. It's the best investment we ever made. You're killing Russians with these weapons. We love it. Take the fight to the Russians. Remember in 2016. Just openly admitting to doing the thing that we're freaking out and hand-wringing out over and accusing them of. This is the Eat, Pray, Love lady? Is that real? Man.
Hi, everybody.
Remember the lady that was like, Vladimir Putin, who is your mother? Maybe we should watch that again. If I was your mother, none of this would be happening. Remember that lady?
Hi, everybody. It's Liz, and I have an announcement to make. So last week, I announced the upcoming publication of my most recent novel, a book called The Snow Forest, that was
It's a
set
fucking
in the middle of
anti-Soviet book,
Siberia
too.
in the middle of the last century, and told the story of a group of individuals who made a decision to remove themselves from society, to resist the Soviet government, and to try to defend nature against industrialization. But over the course of this weekend, I have received an enormous, massive outpouring of reactions and responses from my
Just even that they're
Ukrainian
Russians at all.
readers expressing
She's too worried about getting ratioed by Ukraine flag people on Twitter. She's postponing her whole book because her anti-Soviet book is too upsetting to the Ukraine flag people on Twitter. She's like, no, we can't even publish the book.
anger,
Amazing.
sorrow, disappointment, and pain about the fact that I would choose to release a book into the world right now, any book, no matter what the subject of it is.
Why would you give into this?
And I want to say that I have heard these messages and read these messages, and I respect them.
Why? I don't respect that. I wouldn't respect that if I had just worked hard on something, which literally helps reinforce the very fucking narrative that these pro-Ukraine types should be celebrating. I would not be giving into that. I'd be like telling these people to go fuck themselves. Why do you respect that? They're not going to read your book in the first place. They just hate Russians so much that they're just angry that like you even have a book, even an anti-Soviet narrative that takes place, that features any Russian people in a good light. You know, why would you give into that? That's so lame.
And as a result, I'm making a course correction, and I'm removing the book from its publication schedule. It is not the time for this book to be published. And
Loser.
I do not want to add
Loser shit.
any harm to a group of people who have already experienced and who are all continuing to experience grievous and extreme harm. So that is the choice that I have made.
We've heard your stupid opinions. We see you. You're valid. Amazing.
Got other book projects that I'm working on, and I've made a decision to turn my attention to working on those now. So I just wanted to let everybody know that, and thank you very much.
Huge Putin W. Stopping this book from being published. Oh, I'm sure the book was going to sell a lot of copies, but the people that were complaining about it were not going to buy it. And it's probably a few dozen people online. Like, it's probably not a serious outcry in any way. It's probably a few dozen people with Ukraine flags in their bio online freaking out. Here's some free advice. They're going to complain when you publish it later too. There'll never be a right time for these people. And that's what I think. It's like Russophobia. I don't know how you pronounce that. It's like kind of part of our culture. Like I was saying, it's not even about anti-communism. It goes back to stretches out before the Soviet Union. It's been going on for a long time. You know? And these are the people that have like their vision has kind of like become the mainstream. You're not even allowed to say anything positive about anything Russian. Anybody Russian. You can't even have heroic Russian characters, even ones that ideologically agree with the people that are getting mad here. Yeah, and it is part of overall kind of an Orientalism, for sure. Russophobia. No, it's not that. It's not that. Anyway. I still think about Chris Matthews saying he hate-watched the Americans to check in with what the Russians were doing back then. Chris Matthews.
You can count on me. You're going to have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
Dear President Vladimir Putin, I'm so sorry that I was not.
Thank you. Thank you so much, 10,000 sandwiches, for the 3 gifted subs. I really appreciate that. Thank you, 10,000 sandwiches. Very, very kind of you. Yes, Johnny. Yes. Yes, we're watching it. There's nothing you can do.
Dear President Vladimir Putin, I'm so sorry that I was not your mother.
You can count on me. You're going to have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
Hell yeah. Hell yeah. DRP 50. Thank you. 24-month resub, a tier 2 for DRP.
You can count on me. You're going to have good old
DRP
Rob to talk you through all this.
Thank you and congratulations to you on the highly elite, highly exclusive 24-month, 2-year TRRS shimmering golden sub badge. Congratulations to you, DRP, and thank you again. And thank you, Johnny, as well, for the gifted sub. I appreciate that. And since you subbed, since you gifted a sub, I'll go ahead and close this window right now. Oh shit! I pressed
in the arms of joyous light.
Press the wrong
Never
button on here. Let me try and find the X.
The world unfurled before
you can count on
eyes,
me. You're going to have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
Let me see if I can find the way to close this.
The world would have been warm. So much laughter and joy, and nothing would harm. I can't imagine the stain, the soul-stealing pain.
I think I have a low memory situation. I'm having a hard on my computer. I'm having a hard time.
The formulation of thought quickly taught
closing this.
That you lived in a cruel, unjust world. Is this why you now decide no one will get the best of you? Is this why you do not hide nor away shy from taking back the world? Was it because so early in life, all that strife racked your little body with fear? If I was...
Thank you. Thank you as well to Rad Left Dad. Thanks for the 7 months tier 1. Thank you, Rad Left Dad. I appreciate that. She's been slamming with the freeform poetry. You need a combination of this, and there's the girl that like she does she does these dances on TikTok to like support these liberal causes. The slam poetry aspect is really underrated. Will the hype train make it stop? There's really only one way to find out.
If the world was cold, I'd have died to make you warm. I'd have died to protect you from the unjust, the violence, the terror,
you can
the
count
uncertainty.
On me.
I would
have
have
good
died
old Rob to talk you through all this.
Mr.
Will the hype
Putin,
train make it stop?
If only I'd been your mother.
Thank you, Vlad, for
Perhaps
the 19 months of Prime. I appreciate that.
Would not within your heart imbue a scription to such
19 months of Prime.
That world that you thought was so cruel.
I'm just going to go ahead
Perhaps you would hold dear human life, and on this
close
night,
this video now.
Russia,
Obviously, it's very important to people.
And I would set your mind quite free.
You can count on me. You're going to have good old Rob to
give,
talk you through all this.
And only a mother can take away.
Any moment
when
now.
Holds she doesn't the harm at bay and leaves her boy for the promise of a man. Whatever your story, Mr. President Putin.
Thank you, Gen X Bushy, for the 2 gifted subs. I really appreciate that. Thank you.
But I know if I was your mother, that would be a start towards the awareness of what a powerful being of light.
Yeah, I can't close it, but if you want to keep subscribing, the subs will block it. Whenever you sub, it blocks the video.
I cannot believe I was born too late in a different place when I would have loved you so, watched you play wherever you go.
It's great to see you here. Thank you for watching our work. If you
That's really bad. That is really bad stuff.
Mr. President Putin.
Sorry, I'm just... There we go. President Putin, sir, you're fired. How about that? She's being too nice to Putin, actually, in this, if you ask me. She didn't preface this by saying Putin bad. You know? I think she should have mentioned that up front. All this talk about loving him and stuff like that, I think that's kind of fucked up, if you ask me. I forgot how bad this was. No, so did I. It's been a year since we watched it, or a year and a half now. It's been a year and a half since we watched this. I think it was about time. So, folks, we do have this hype train going on as well. You know, it's Monday. Getting to the sub goal on a Monday that'd be kind of a nice little treat for everyone in the community. So I'd just like to remind you that if you enjoy this program, if you enjoy the commentary and the analysis and the interviews that I do over here on twitch.tv/Rob Rousseau, please, if you can, subscribe. Subscribe to TRRS. It costs $5 per month. It is completely free of charge with an Amazon Prime account, which you can convert to a Twitch Prime sub. Totally free. You can also gift subscriptions to rocket right up to the very top of Twitch's only triangle-shaped, two-dimensional, trickle-down clout and friendship access tiered reward system. I don't really have the energy to do the big pitch on this, but we do have this hype train going. Another 2 minutes left to get to level 4. So please, if you can, folks, subscribe to TRS. Don't make me play this video again.
You can count on me. You're going to have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
Hey, Antonia, thank you for the 18 months of Tier 1. Thank you, Antonia. I appreciate that. Very kind of you. Just 6 months away, Antonia, from the golden sub badge. 6 months away. Do I need to play this video again? Is that what you're saying? Is that what the people are saying? You know, I would like to move on from it. I would like to move on from it personally. You know? I don't want to have to go to those kind of lengths. Why would you play it again? We were good and subscribed. Why? Why? I was trying to find a Captain Kirk quote. when he's climbing the mountain, he says, "Because it's there." You could always incentivize chat with a nice smooth listening song from the U.S. Secretary of State Blinken. Okay. Is this really Anthony Blinken? Really? Really? Okay, let's hear this. Possible song of the summer.
I took a look around, nothing to see, but then I finally found somebody like me. I wanted to tell ya, but I was so afraid, yeah. You said you liked me fine, but not in that way. Oh, was it such a crime to want you to stay? And then I came on to you, but you said let's just be friends, yeah. You're paying me. Lip service tonight.
Thank you, Marty.
Service tonight. Oh yeah. I got to right to expect you to feel the way I do. That this love is for real. I wanna convince you. This is a powerful thing. Yeah. I know it's a mistake to open my heart, make things too easy, shed light on the dark. You want a challenge, but I'm ready to surrender. You're playing me.
There's also the Morning Joe musical project as well.
Lip service tonight. Lip service tonight. Lip service tonight. Oh yeah. I got to right. I got to right.
Kind of got some Peter Frampton kind of stuff going on. There's like a Frampton element. Is he playing that solo, or do you bring in a ringer there? It's not very good. The bridge collapsing just like U.S. infrastructure. Oh my gosh. Oh my. Brutal. Yeah, I don't know. That was not great. And yeah, someone pointed out kind of rapey lyrics. I wasn't totally listening to the lyrics. But I feel like you can apply it to U.S. foreign policy as well. I take a look around. Nothing to see, but then I finally found somebody like me. I wanted to tell you, but I was so afraid. You said you like me fine, but not in that way. It's like talking to the countries that are joining the Belt and Road Initiative. Oh, is it such a crime to want you to stay? And then I came on to you, but you said, let's just be friends. Yeah. You're paying me lip service. You're paying me lip service tonight. These are all, this is going out to like BRICS. It's going out to BRICS and like the countries on the Belt and Road Initiative. All the places that like the United States is losing its kind of grip over global hegemony. Expecting you to feel the way I do, that this love is for real. I want to convince you. This is a powerful thing. I know it's a mistake to open my heart, make things too easy, shed light on the dark. You want a challenge? Challenge! But I'm ready to surrender. If only the U.S. would surrender. I don't know. Not very good. Not very good. Let's continue. We'll continue watching this Ben Norton clip. and then we'll try and talk about what I wanted to get into today. I got very derailed by my bad brain. They're not sending their best. No, they're not. Ben Norton, a way better musician. I didn't even realize Ben was a musician. He's doing some really cool shit as well. We should jam.
It prevented the end to the war in Afghanistan, which of course happened a year later. So it dragged out the war in Afghanistan for yet another year. Meanwhile, just 2 weeks after this report came out and was spread all across the corporate media, the Pentagon came out and said that it is probably not true. Then U.S. Defense Secretary Mark Esper and the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Mark Milley, said that the intelligence on the supposed Russian bounty program had not been corroborated, and they do not believe any attacks in Afghanistan that resulted in U.S. casualties can be directly tied to it. The head of the Pentagon said that the Pentagon's defense intelligence agencies were unable to corroborate the report. A year later, in 2021, when everyone had forgotten about this Bountygate scandal, the Daily Beast published a report acknowledging, quote, U.S. intel walks back claim Russians put bounties on American troops. So it was shown to be yet another fabrication carried out by U.S. spy agencies. NBC News also published a report titled, Remember those Russian bounties for dead U.S. troops? Biden admin says the CIA intel is not conclusive, and the Biden administration admitted that the CIA had only, quote, low to moderate confidence in this false story. Now, this is very revealing because it shows where this false story claimed from. The CIA, the Central Intelligence Agency, because usually in these stories, almost always, the sources are anonymous U.S. intelligence officials. They don't say what intelligence agency it is. The so-called U.S. intelligence community includes more than a dozen different spy agencies, but very often when the media is spreading these false stories and quoting anonymous intelligence officials, you can bet it is normally the CIA, which has a long history of spreading this kind of gray propaganda as part of information warfare operations targeting adversaries of Washington. Another well-known recent example of these kinds of information warfare campaigns carried out by the CIA is so-called Havana syndrome. For years, every single major corporate media outlet in the United States spread hyperbolic claims, false claims that Cuba and or Russia and or China were attacking U.S. spies and diplomats with very sophisticated weapons, including pulsed microwave weapons or directed energy weapons, the kinds of things you would see.
And it's the same thing about the spy base. I don't think this stuff is happening. I don't think China is operating secret police stations or secret spy bases on Cuba, just as I don't think the Cubans or anyone else have access to this like microwave headache gun that only targets imperialist diplomats. I don't think those things are true, but if they are true, I think they're cool. You know, I think China should have a secret spy base on Cuba, and I think Cuba should have access to a microwave headache gun that affects U.S. diplomats. I think if they've invented that technology, that's an incredible accomplishment, and that's something that should be rewarded and celebrated.
Lifted from a science fiction movie in Hollywood. They claim that there were a series of anomalous incidents and that U.S. spies and diplomats had headaches and had trouble sleeping, and they felt bad and they, felt depressed, and they concluded that supposedly foreign adversaries had been attacking these U.S. officials. However, that was later proven to be completely false. In 2022, the CIA came out and admitted that Havana syndrome was not the result of a sustained campaign by a hostile power. Even the director of the CIA himself, William Burns, came out publicly and said that they investigated and there is absolutely no evidence saying that a foreign power carried out attacks on U.S. spies and diplomats as part of so-called Havana syndrome.
I want to ask you about something that has been going on for 6 years since the first known case, and that is what the government calls anomalous health incidents. and which is commonly known as the Havana syndrome. So 6 years later, do we know anything more about what caused these illnesses?
On the investigation side, over the course of the last year and a half, we've thrown some of our very best officers at this, working closely with partners across the U.S. intelligence community and the U.S. government. It's fair to say that we've learned a lot over that time. There's still more to learn. It's a frustrating process, but I have great confidence in the professionalism of the people who are carrying this out and in their commitment to objectivity. A few months ago, the intelligence community across the board, made public some preliminary findings. The broadest was that we don't assess that a foreign player, whether the Russians or anyone else, is behind or is responsible for a sustained global campaign on the scale
Targets
of
hung over
has been
Americans.
reported,
They're experiencing
to
empathy
arm
for the first
US
time in their
personnel
fucking
with
lives.
a weapon or some kind of external device. We further stated publicly several months ago that in the majority of incidents, and we've investigated each one as thoroughly as we possibly can, and we're still working on a number of them, that you could find reasonable alternative explanations, whether it was other environmental factors.
I think we just make shit up when
or,
someone misses an appointment.
Pre-existing.
That's like me. When I fuck something up like I did today. Oh, sorry, bro, I had Havana syndrome. They got me with the headache ray. They got me. It's everyone's fault but my own.
Medical conditions or other kind of medical explanations.
Now, this was very ironic because 1 year before, that same CIA director, William Burns, said that they were investigating and that if Russia was behind so-called Havana syndrome, he threatened there would be consequences for Moscow, implying very heavily that Russia was supposedly attacking US diplomats. So these are several examples of US spies at the CIA and potentially other intelligence agencies spreading ridiculous false claims about foreign adversaries, and then they're just mindlessly regurgitated all across the media and every single mainstream corporate media outlet without a shred of skepticism, and they're pretty much always shown to be false. Of course, the most famous, well-known example is the scare over so-called weapons of mass destruction, WMDs, that supposedly Saddam Hussein had in Iraq. Those were false claims spread by the CIA under the George W. Bush administration that were also proven to be completely false. But what was the intention? It was to justify, to manufacture consent for the illegal US invasion of Iraq and the military occupation of Iraq that led to more than 1 million Iraqi deaths. And today, the intention behind this information warfare is very clear: to demonize China, also to demonize Cuba, of course, and to justify the new Cold War that the United States is waging against Beijing. Now, the fact that some people in the Pentagon have been trying to push back against this shows that they see how dangerous this situation is. The Pentagon, that is the US military, recognizes that they cannot win a war against China and also against Russia. They have repeatedly held war games that show the US would lose. So they're the ones trying to put a break on this and saying, this is very dangerous. We can't keep escalating tensions and pushing for a war on China. At least some people in the Pentagon. Of course, all of these massive bureaucracies in the US government and the national security state are full of contradictions, with some people pushing in some directions, some pulling in other directions. But the point is that clearly there are some very level-headed people who are saying that we cannot have a war with China. And then there are the hawks in the State Department and also in the spy agencies who are saying, no, we need to continue pushing for a more aggressive posture against China leading up to potentially war. And their goal is regime change. It's overthrowing the Chinese government, overthrowing the Communist Party of China, just as US President Joe Biden said the US goal is overthrowing Russian President Vladimir Putin. That's their strategy. So we're living in a very dangerous moment, but I think it's important to educate yourself on the tactics that spy agencies use, how they weaponize the media, playing the media as an instrument. In fact, As I mentioned earlier, one of the co-founders of the CIA, the top official Frank Wisner, famously said that the CIA uses the media as a musical instrument. It plays it like a mighty Wurlitzer to manipulate public opinion. And here we see multiple examples of that. This claim of
Yeah, I mean, this is an interesting. We've kind of been talking about this, Ben. You say that was a pretty good video, or James, sorry. It reminded me, unfortunately, how many people in the population never get the memo about when these things get debunked. The effect of the lies emotionally once you're sucked into the Western narrative is very strong as it solidifies your pre-existing beliefs. Yeah, I mean, that's what we've been talking about, because we see how this story about the China secret spy base in Cuba gets out there, and all these news outlets cover it, and they basically immediately, like the actual government, official government spokespeople officially deny it. That doesn't actually stop, though, the story from getting out there. It doesn't stop the media from reporting on it. In fact, they report on it even more. Or the same thing with this, like, the Chinese political interference CSIS thing, or Havana syndrome. There's these official denials that come out, but it doesn't really matter, because once they've officially denied it and they have this kind of degree of separation, there's still a huge audience that just is going to continue to believe it regardless of whatever they say about it. That's why we were wondering if some of these reports, are they coming from rogue factions of the intelligence community or competing ideological factions? That's obviously possible. But it's also possible that this might be part of the strategy of getting these stories out there and then maintaining this kind of level of plausible deniability by having anonymous sources report these stories, have official spokespeople of the U.S. government denying it publicly, but then, like, their denial, it just creates this degree of separation between the intelligence agencies and these stories. But the effect is the same. The effect is on the media is the exact same. Raising questions is just as effective as presenting objective evidence for a population weaned on anti-communist propaganda. For sure, it's like you don't need proof or evidence. You just need to ask the basic questions, get the story out there, and then you yourself can go out there and deny it, but it doesn't have any impact on, because like James is pointing out, people are already having their preconceived notions confirmed, and that's all that really matters.
China spying on the U.S. through Cuba, Bounty Gate in Afghanistan, or Havana syndrome. We see that these are all parts of a sophisticated information warfare campaign. And it's not just people around the world that are being targeted. It's people in the United States itself who are being targeted by their own government and the corporate media that simply regurgitates what the government says. So in the future, when you see these kinds of crazy stories that seem, like Cold War propaganda, you should be very skeptical. And unless there's extraordinary evidence, you shouldn't believe their extraordinary claims. Go through the article, see what the sources are. And if it's anonymous US intelligence officials who they can't name, well, you should definitely learn from history and show some skepticism. With that, I'm going to conclude here. I'm Ben Norton. This is Geopolitical Economy Report. Please
Okay, that was great. Thank you to Ben Norton. Please, I'm going to put a link to the video in the chat. Please, if you're not already, subscribe to Geopolitical Economy Report. Make sure you support the work that Ben Norton's doing. It's fantastic stuff. Friend of the stream, former guest of the stream. Make sure you're supporting that. I'm going to take a brief 5-minute break here, folks. Brief 5-minute break. I'll come back and we'll talk about what I intended to focus on when we were starting out. How does that sound? Does that sound good to you? I hope it does. Just give me a moment here. Okay, don't go anywhere. Right. I'm going to take a brief break. I'll come back and we'll keep this party going. Okay, talk to you soon. Lennon rizzed up Nicholas as the new drip czar. Hello, 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 hello. I'm back. Thank you for indulging me there. How's it going? Hey, Valkyrie, how's it going? Hello, Brian. Thank you, folks. Okay.
You've just become an elite member of the Friendship Triangle.
Brian, aka Lennon Smash, thank you very much for the 5 gifted subs. Hell yeah. I really appreciate that. Thank you. What a welcome back from my little break there. Wonderful. Wonderful. Oh, that's cool. Genuine and Yin Yang twins. It's all right. It was great going on Subversive History. How was Genuine and Yin Yang twins? 5 gifted subs for Rob's chair. That's right. Absolutely. Yelled, skeet skeet with 10K of my fellow city people. Hell yeah. That's what it's all about, folks. That's what it's all about. Well, I'm going to try and power through this actual segment that I wanted to do. I find myself extremely tired. Like I am tempted to just like end the stream because of how fucking tired I am. But I do want to make sure we talk about this. You know, it's Pride Month. I don't think I've been doing a lot of like Pride themed content. And I think it's important to focus on this considering the ways that like LGBTQIA plus communities are just under total assault right now. I think it's important at all times, but especially right now at this moment to kind of like focus on that. And I would like to do that. So let's do that. Let's do that for at least 30 minutes here. What's a good title? So there's two parts of this. I wanted to talk about this this protest or whatever you want to call it that took place outside this school in Glendale, California. And then a very similar situation that happened this week on Friday in Canada. And we're seeing right now the result. You know, we've covered this like panic as it's kind of like increased in severity over the last couple of weeks and months. The trans panic. I mean, the trans panic is the way that it's been has been the focal point of this. But I think one thing that like transgender people have been saying, and what a lot of activists that are part of this community and allies have been saying, is that the assault on trans people is really just like a way to attack or roll back rights for everyone that's part of the LGBTQIA plus community. And I think that's being proven to be like completely true, as we're seeing here. Like we've talked about, the trans panic, the obsession over like Dylan Mulvaney and Bud Light and all this stuff over the last couple of weeks. And the way, like the Matt Walshes of the world and this like incredibly hostile and dangerous and scary kind of anti-trans movement that they're spearheading. But as people have been pointing out, again, people in these communities have been pointing out, it's never just been about trans people. It's that the transgender issue, it's this front of the culture war that these reactionaries feel like they can win. They feel like there's a receptive audience. There's way more people that had maybe become a little bit too accustomed to their liking of like the idea of pride or the idea of, gays or lesbians having rights that they previously didn't have, gay marriage and this kind of thing. They see this as a way that they can like, there's this kind of skepticism or cynicism amongst conservatives and amongst liberals as well, as we see in the UK, how liberals have totally latched on to the trans panic. And now these like extreme reactionary groups are using this kind of trans panic that they're creating, this grooming panic, but now it's going to apply to the entire LGBTQIA plus community. And like we're seeing now this whole idea, like we're really seeing just the idea of Pride Month or rainbow flags, right? It's not just about trans people grooming kids anymore or anything like that. It's literally any recognition whatsoever of Pride Month in public schools, on the part of the White House, for these big brands or whatever. That's now all being lumped into this category of grooming kids and being dangerous, and this dangerous assault on the traditional family or whatever it is, however they say it. So I think, all the trans activists and allies that have been ringing alarm bells about this now for a few years as they've been come under increasingly hostile attacks have been proven really correct, that it was never just about that, and that it was all part of a broader assault on LGBTQIA plus rights. And now it's really gone kind of a mask off moment over the last couple of weeks. This example outside the school board in Glendale is an example of that. This is a school recognizing Pride Month. This is a school board just recognizing Pride Month, and that's all. In the same way that the Bud Light, it's an attack on public education as a concept, for sure. Yeah, exactly. Just the idea, in the same way that the Dylan Mulvaney thing was just based over an Instagram post, like a single Instagram post, where Bud Light gave this trans influencer a free case of beer and had one single Instagram post. They're still talking about this, weeks later. And now we're talking about just school boards recognizing Pride Month. And now that the way that is being framed as just this inherently sinister thing, grooming kids. It's grooming kids to have a rainbow flag in your school or outside the White House. And you see now parents that are being like completely radicalized by this kind of like panic that's been going on, are now showing up outside school board meetings and like assaulting parents of kids. And it's not just Glendale. Like people are pointing out, there's a big conservative demographic in Glendale, which I don't doubt. This is not just happening in the US, though. It's not just happening in Glendale. It's happening in Canada as well, as we saw on Friday. We saw on Friday in Ottawa this was going on, which we're going to look at after this. And Joel Hardin, who's like a progressive NDP member of parliament, got punched in the face. Got punched by one of these like anti-LGBTQ activists punched Joel Harden, and he's being framed in like conservative media here as being like a groomer. He's like a pro grooming MP gets punched. Like, it's really fucking scary how fast this is totally escalated. And like I was talking about on the Subversive History stream, I think it's important right now. It's like you have to kind of figure out where this line to walk here. Like, we don't want to give any credibility or credit to conservative movements 20 years ago. There's this whole meme that like, oh no, 20 years ago they were okay with these things, and just now, no, they weren't. I mean, gay marriage wasn't even legal in America until this decade. I mean, it was widespread, ideologically in agreement, both parties. Like, you saw Obama and Hillary in the 2008 election were talking about gay marriage, and were both opposed to it. So not even conservatives, but with liberals, these things were not good 20 years ago. Certainly, they weren't more relaxed. We talk Jon Stewart as an example. You know, Jon Stewart was always often making, transphobic jokes on the Daily Show. Is the liberal hero, the liberal comic hero, doing that kind of thing. To John's credit, he has tried to atone for some of that and has apologized for it, and is trying to do what he can to promote trans rights and protect trans kids now, which I applaud Jon Stewart for. But the idea that these things were settled issues 10 or 20 years ago is obviously just totally false. So I think you need to walk a line between recognizing the way this has escalated a lot over the last 2 years or so, has escalated into this real attack, has become this big culture war flashpoint, while also acknowledging that this kind of thing has always been there. I mean, I think in terms of this grooming panic, when it's about trans people or just about pride in general, or about the LGBTQIA plus community in general, it's not this new phenomenon accusing queer people of grooming kids. Really what we're seeing is a return to like the exact same tactics and methods that were used when gay rights was emerging as like a concept, as a important social movement. All the stuff about grooming kids into the gay lifestyle and all, like, these are all the exact same arguments that were being made decades ago when these ideas started to kind of enter the mainstream. And really that's what we're seeing right now is I think it became maybe like uncouth or unpopular for conservatives to say these things over the last couple of years. And there was maybe even an effort on the part of conservatives to suggest that they supported gay rights even because they'd become somewhat normalized. But now you see them immediately reverting back to all the absolute worst smears and attacks and insults that they were using, decades ago when gay rights were emerging as an impactful social movement. Isn't there a new book connecting the anti-trans panic to Nazism? I forget it now. I mean, I don't know if there's a new book about it, but I think it's important to point out in the rise in Weimar Republic and these book burnings that were taking place in Berlin in the early stages of the Nazi takeover were books and studies, in addition to other things, but were books and studies that were about breaking down the idea of gender and were about trans issues. That was a very important part of the Nazis' obsession with returning to these kinds of rigid gender hierarchies. So it's a big part of it. They called it recruiting instead of grooming. Yeah, for sure, but it's the same concept, right? And that's what I think the amazing thing about this moment is right now, right? It's like the idea, talking about public schools even teaching kids that other types of families exist beyond just the orthodox Christian influenced nuclear family, one mom, one dad, the 3 kids, the white picket fence or whatever. Just teaching kids at all that there are other kinds of families. There are families with 2 dads or 2 moms, or just teaching kids about gender or consent or trans issues at all. Just that has become so offensive to these extreme reactionary groups that they're responding with actual violence right now, like brown shirt kind of violence. Let's look at this clip.
It's breakout outside the Glendale School Board meeting as board members prepare to recognize June as Pride Month. Hello, and thank you so much for joining us as we stream live. I'm Colleen Sullivan. This is Eyewitness News at 6:30. Chris Christie is live overhead in Air 7 HD with the very latest right now. Chris.
That's right, Colleen. A confrontational protest with protesters and counter protesters in front of the Glendale Unified School District, where that meeting was taking place to declare June Pride Month. However, the Glendale Police Department has asked them to go into recess as they are not allowing anybody else inside the building following a brawl out here in the parking lot. They were keeping the defenders of the LGBT community away from the conservative group who was protesting Pride Month. But those groups came together in the parking lot. Punches were thrown several minutes ago. Several agitators really starting to cause trouble in there. And then Glendale police forced to pull out their riot gear and their batons. And they have now formed several skirmish lines here in the parking lot to keep everybody at bay. They have tried to implement a dispersal order, but for right now, they are just trying to keep the peace here as tempers continue to flare here in Glendale. Reporting live from Air 7 HD, I'm Chris Christie, ABC 7 Eyewitness News.
Wow, a very, very active scene right below you, Chris. Again, we are going to continue to stay monitoring the situation from above. We will continue to check back.
The cops in Ottawa threatened to arrest counter-protesters for using a siren to drown out bigotry. The cops said it was assault. And of course, the cops are coming down on the side of the reactionary protesters, both here and in Ottawa, time and time again. I know I may sound a little unhinged right now, but we're not far from states just rounding up trans people and imprisoning them. I mean, that's starting to happen in Florida already, right? Under DeSantis. Kids are like being taken away from their parents. And like the idea that like teachers or parents or psychologists that give any credence whatsoever to like gender affirming care or raising kids in that environment are being like kids are being taken away from their families. Like it's incredibly fucked up. And you know, we talk about the bathroom stuff, and there's this kind of like gotcha thing that happens where it's like, well, you know, like there'll be like a trans man or whatever. So like, well, you want me, you know, going into a female bathroom, like a trans man with a beard who's like a very male presenting. And we think that that's going to have some kind of impact or consequence. But the reality is no, when trans men in these situations where these bathroom laws are being passed, when a trans man goes into a female bathroom and says, well, I was assigned female at birth or whatever, so I'm following the rules. No, they're also going to get assaulted. They're also going to get targeted. They're also going to be subject to this kind of state violence. The goal for these kinds of things is to just have trans people just not be able to use public facilities and to just encourage people to just not engage in society whatsoever, to make it as difficult as possible. You know what I mean? Like a feminine presenting trans woman is going to go into the men's bathroom. No, that's not going to be even if that's what the law says, they're still going to be subject to assault.
Use the computer to mark up the size of the account.
Silly parents, the children are already being groomed by the sickos dressed in camouflage trying to send your child to some foreign land to secure their investments.
Thank you, Dimitri, for the 200 friend coin. And yeah, and that's what it comes down to, right? And like, it's one of the things I've been occurring to, and it's occurring to me. And I mean, it's not like we need to. It's not like sometimes when we point out like hypocrisy, right-wing hypocrisy, like it doesn't really do anything. It doesn't really mean anything. Like they know they're being hypocrites, and it doesn't really matter to them, you know. I do think it is fascinating though that these reactionaries who believe in like the right of parents, they believe that like kids should be the property of their parents, basically. And that's what a lot of this stuff is about. Like, right, you can't teach my kids this. Like, they're my kid. And like, even if in the public school system is going to talk about different kinds of families or recognize that gay or trans people exist or any of this stuff, no, that's like an affront to my rights as the parent. But while simultaneously believing that like as parents they need to have this like fundamental right to raise their kids however they want, including indoctrinating them in their own weird religious cults or indoctrinating them into promoting or upholding imperialism or any of these things. The reality is though, if like queer parents or any parents that are part of the LGBTQIA plus community that want to raise their kids in that kind of environment, right? Who normally, if they believe in these parents' rights, then parents that are part of the sort of queer community, if they want to raise their kids under those kind of values, teaching them these things about gender, or, you know, breaking down this gender paradigm, or talking about the LGBTQIA plus issues, or raising kids in that context, they also don't believe that parents should be able to do that, right? That's where their like steadfast insistence on the full rights of parents to do whatever they want with their kids. Well, it stops there, right? It's like, yeah, we have the right to indoctrinate our kids into these weird religious sects or whatever it is. But not only do public schools not have the right to talk about LGBTQIA plus issues, but nor do parents that are part of that community, nor are they allowed to raise kids in that environment. Like we're seeing in Florida, where if parents that engage with or talk to their kids about gender issues or trans issues are literally having their kids taken away from them. And no, it's not really valuable to point out this kind of hypocrisy, but I think it's still worth like kind of making this point. My children are my property, they say, which is of course the ultimate justification for sex abuse. Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. So just this whole thing is really alarming, and the way that like these kind of reactionaries, the Matt Walshes of the world, have been kind of planning on using Pride Month in order to like continue to push this reactionary agenda, and we're seeing the effect that it's having and the violence that it's creating. And then of course this pissed me off a lot as well. You know, this whole idea, this is a school recognizing Pride Month. This is just a school recognizing Pride Month. And then you have Tim Pool and the way that he frames this, right? When these parents are being assaulted outside this meeting. And Tim Pool, this is really an amazing take. Tim Pool is one of the most popular content creators on YouTube. With YouTube, of course, which stands with their LGBTQIA plus community and creators and all that bullshit. And they engage in that kind of cursory pride things. But then, of course, they have Tim Pool as part of their platform. And this is the way he frames this. If you're a dad and you're apolitical and you get angry that pedophiles are trying to groom your kids, he, of course, is pushing back on this idea that any such person would be a far-right extremist. But the way that Tim Pool, who casts himself as being this like voice of reason, or this like enlightened liberal or enlightened centrist or whatever, framing the idea of a school board recognizing Pride Month as quote, pedophiles trying to groom your kids. I think that's like, and then Tim Pool is the very kind of person that's going to be like, oh, it's the extremes of the left that are pushing me and others towards the right. As he's sitting there and using his huge platform to make this equation between a school board just recognizing Pride Month with pedophiles trying to groom your kids. And then, of course, framing the anti-LGBTQ activists that are out there assaulting other parents, framing them as being apolitical. It's being apolitical. Where, of course, if you're like a black person that is protesting, you know, the police murdering or disproportionately murdering black people in huge numbers, or black people being victims of horrific state violence, and assaulting counter-protesters, I don't think Tim Pool would be describing them as being apolitical. Of course, that's not apolitical. When you're showing up, like, it's not apolitical when you're getting so outraged and angry at a school board recognizing Pride Month that you're out there assaulting other protesters outside these school board meetings. That is the farthest thing from apolitical you can possibly be. But you see where Tim Pool is willing to ascribe this kind of apolitical beliefs to people, and when he's not willing to do that. D. Gary, I don't know. It's kind of a weird question. Yeah, as you know, kids are often like, they're targets of abuse in the church, in other areas. Like, kids do need to understand these basic concepts about, you know, their bodies, about who has, about consent, about these things. Like, this is how to protect kids from abuse. And the longer the kids are kept in the dark about this kind of thing, the easier it is to actually seriously prey on them and groom them and abuse them. That actually being open and honest about this kind of thing for kids is actually really important to do, I think. And even people talking about basics, it's not even about LGBTQIA plus stuff. It's about like basic sex ed, like teaching sex ed to kids, which has been going on for a long time. There's people that learned about basic sexual education in high school and elementary school and these basic bodily functions and these kinds of things. I know you have the same people now that they're adults and have kids being like, you can't teach kids about about sex, about these sexual concepts. It's like, this has been like an understood to be part of the general public curriculum for like a really, really long time. And yeah, I think, like I said, I don't want to give credit to the conservatives of a few decades ago. They've always been extreme reactionary like that, extremely reactionary in this way, or being against basic sex ed since it existed, like Rex Cool Guy is pointing out. But I do think we do need to be aware of the way these things are escalating, the way that they're becoming more and more comfortable hurling around these kinds of accusations about grooming or pedophilia or these kinds of things. And how that manifests in real violence. Anyway, I'd like to talk about this situation in Ottawa that's been going on, which mirrors this kind of thing. I don't think, for instance, 8-year-old in elementary school should be taught how to tuck or other sexual-oriented acts. I'd be interested to know where that's actually happening. But when you're talking about, I'm not against teaching kids about LGBT history and literature. I mean, if you talk to any transgender person, though, they'll tell you that they understood basic realities about their gender when they were very young, And kids need to have the tools to be able to understand these things and understand these concepts. I don't think anyone's out there teaching kids how to tuck, as you put it. I don't really think that's happening. And linking to the Daily Mail is probably not a good way of going about proving your point. And here's a closer look at the actual violence, and this is what Tim Pool was sharing. This is how Tim Pool. So this is Glendale again. I'll go to Ottawa in a moment. This is what Tim Pool was describing on Twitter. I don't know what he's talked about on YouTube, but this is what Tim Pool described as apolitical parents angry about pedophiles grooming their kids. This is how Tim Pool described this. Okay, goodbye, Gary. You will not be missed. Go away. This is how Tim Pool described apolitical parents angry about, as he puts it, pedophiles grooming their kids, which is literally just a school board recognizing Pride Month. Goodbye, Gary. Take care. This is about a school board recognizing Pride Month, right? And Tim Pool describes that as pedophiles grooming their kids, and he describes this kind of violence as these apolitical parents. It's complete nonsense. Apolitical dads. It is weird how these people are never outside Catholic churches, where all the vast majority of the grooming and child abuse and trafficking is taking place. In fact, many of the people, as I've been pointing out, like Matt Walsh, that are carrying out this panic, this grooming panic, are devout Catholics themselves. Matt Walsh, who even defended the church, the Catholic Church, from pedophilia accusations. That's how much Matt Walsh cares about this shit. Yeah, or outside military recruiters. For sure. I'm just going to take a brief moment before I find this clip from Ottawa and Joel Harden to just share that this is one of my I just really enjoy this. A moment of hope and inspiration from Charles Barkley. NBA legend Charles Barkley.
I want to say this. If you're gay and transgender, I love you. Hey, and if anybody gives you shit, you tell them Charles said, fuck you.
I love that. Let's see if I can find Stu's reporting on this. Left Hand Stu, friend of the stream. Just give me one moment here. Give me one moment while I just scroll. Just scroll in here. Okay. So here's official TRRS correspondent Left Hand Stu, who was at this protest in Ottawa. This is where Horizon Ottawa and Community Solidarity Ottawa organized a counter-protest to meet Billboard Chris and Josh Alexander, who have organized a demonstration at nearby schools. So you see, first of all, you see here our reactionary movement here in Canada tailing the US. If we want to get the idea that we're better somehow, we're above these kinds of attacks, because our prime minister wears the the pride socks or whatever it is. Like, obviously we're not. We're seeing all these same phenomenon happening here as well. Suddenly proud of my Barkley shirt I had back in the day. If you found that again, Lodane, that would be a great look for you, I think. I'm very out of the loop on the Canadian version of this. Yeah, well, I think that's why it's important to focus on this. Sometimes in Canada, we falsely give ourselves the idea that our reactionary movements here are not as bad, or, that we're somehow better than the US, or, more advanced, which is obviously false. So this was the reporting that Stu did. You're in Ottawa. That's bullshit. Half our right-wing psycho talking heads are literally fucking Canadian. Yeah, seriously. Yeah. The Canadians have been like the head of the snake of like this kind of new right, alt-right reactionary movement. So here's lead organizer Emily Quayle, a parent of 2 students at Broadview, public school where this was kicking off.
They're not going to stop just at schools. These people are a movement. They are allied with white supremacists, anti-Semites. Some people that are coming have swastikas tattooed on their bodies. This is far beyond and I don't want to reduce it to say simple transphobic protest, but it's a massive fascist movement. Billboard Chris is going to be speaking soon in the States with Marco Rubio and Donald Trump for
Who the fuck's Billboard Chris?
Possibly considered a domestic terrorist organization called
Billboard Chris is someone that I've avoided learning about, and I feel like we might have to look into.
Moms for Liberty. Like, this is an international thing where people are being flown in from Florida, BC, the east coast of Canada. And so we have to start treating it like for what it is. The board's response has been quite disappointing, to be honest. They've been taking a role that everyone has the right to protest. They would just rather it not happen in front of schools. To which I say, these are our schools. This is our neighborhood. We have the right to defend it from these people.
Many of these people don't even have fucking kids in the first place.
There'd be no one else left to stop them from coming down. And further, the few people that would want to show up would be incredibly unsafe because they wouldn't have the safety of numbers and organizational skills. Also, there is no acceptable place for this. Where would you like the fascists to rally instead? Do you want them to rally in front of someone else's house?
Maybe I can reach out to Emily about bringing her on the show. She seems like someone that would be great to talk to about this.
Attacking libraries and performance venues? Do you want them to start moving and finding other public spheres? Do you want them in front of hospitals? At our public offices? Absolutely not. So there is no acceptable place for this, and the only way to correctly counter fascism is by showing up like this in the street and telling them that we outnumber them, and we will not let them spread their transphobic fascist ideology anywhere, here or anywhere else. And that starts with community strength, and that's what I'm really proud to see today. They should be encouraging people to come out to counter-protest. They should be doing more than just statements of saying that we stand with our queer community. They have to stand up and do a lot more. They need to use their resources that they have at hand to actually push back. Considering to allow them to even get close to the schools is, quite frankly, the most unsafe thing that I've ever heard from a school in my life. So they need to start standing with us. That's a societal problem and a big movement that we're fighting right now. So we need to have a big, strong societal and community response to stop it.
And just, I don't know if you've paid attention to any of the goings on in New Brunswick, Policy 713, and sort of kind of a bit of a revolt. The government might come down, but are you concerned, because up until this point, the schools have sort of been these safe places for students. Are you concerned that this movement is starting to gain traction, at least in the legislative side? And you could see.
Of course, it's not starting to. It is. It is. We have extremely far-right politicians elected in our federal House of Commons. We have a government in Ontario that is refusing to allow autonomy to communities via the school boards. This is so much bigger than any one legislature. This is happening. It feels like a rising tide in a way, like a tsunami almost, but the roots of this are deeply, deeply embedded. A lot of it got triggered by the pandemic and economic unrest and feeling that we were left behind, which so many of us were, with record profits and people suffering. It's been a really hard time for most people, which is a ripe breeding ground for people to buy into, oh, it's immigrants that's the reason why I don't have a good job, or it's trans kids is why my kids aren't doing well in school. Well, no, it's actually the fact that class sizes are ballooning. That's the problem. And we have governments responding with further austerity measures instead of actually funding the community supports that we need. So that's the strength of community, right?
I just made the mistake of looking up Emily Quayle on Twitter to see if I could maybe contact her, because she seems like she would be great to talk to. And I'm seeing all the quote tweets of people disputing the very clearly explained and important things that she's saying, just completely dismissing it as being woke mind virus bullshit nonsense or whatever. I mean, it's incredibly clear and articulately explained. And obviously has had no effect on the actual people that are part of this this fear campaign and this trans panic, or this anti-pride panic that's now going on.
we're standing up not just for trans kids, we're standing up for like community supports in a broad sense of the word, because that's the thing that they can't stand. They want to have charter schools and private schools. They want to have private medical clinics, I'm sure, so that they don't have to put their kids into like a public GP.
They have these names. There's Josh Alexander. He's a very sort of, he's popping up in a lot of these protests. There's a level of almost, I don't want to say celebrity to it.
Big shout out to our friend Left Hand Stu for doing this interview and this coverage, by the way. He did a fantastic job with this. Please, everyone, give Stu a follow. I just find his... Where is it? Make sure you give Left Hand Stu a follow. I'll put his Twitter in the chat.
But do you what do you think is sort of the main driver behind this? Is it just...
Well, the convoy didn't come out of nowhere, right? Mm-hmm. The convoy wasn't just people fighting against vaccine regulations and things like that. Most of the people there weren't truckers, as we all know now. Mm-hmm.
As we talked about as well. I mean, I mentioned this on the Insurgents podcast this week. After that convoy, after they got everything that they wanted, everything they ostensibly cared about, and all the vaccine mandates were lifted and the mask mandates were lifted, and we all just pretended that COVID is not an issue anymore, you know, exactly what these people wanted, and everything opened back up. Obviously that didn't satisfy them, and their delusions of this like ongoing persecution still persist and continue. And now they've just taken this kind of this pathological persecution complex, and now they've fixated on these like conspiracy theories, like 15-minute cities and all this stuff, so they can still they have to avoid the reality that like they get everything that they've wanted. All their petty little concerns are always being addressed at every step. We've completely moved on from COVID just as they demanded they are, and none of them are satisfied. They're all still upset and angry and freaking out.
There were also tons of really hateful
in my opinion, most of
ideologies.
this kind of stuff and other stuff like conspiracy theories stem from the feeling of alienation from their labor under capitalism. You can sense something is wrong. They have no class analysis to explain it. I think that's a good way of looking at it, Jay. And that's the thing, when you have this increased alienation in this deeply anti-communist society that we live in, with this very advanced anti-communist propaganda machine aimed at us from cradle to grave. And that's true. It does get funneled into these like bizarre reactionary movements because people do. There's that legitimate feeling of alienation, and I don't want to absolve anyone of bigotry or anything else. Doing the whole thing about the working class person that's been turned off by NAFTA getting swept up in these bigoted movements. I think some people are bigoted regardless. I don't want to give them too much of an out there, but I do think that plays an important role in people's radicalization.
Being spread at that convoy, and those didn't just pop up out of nowhere. Those have been rooted in our society for a really long time, and the longer that we let it go unchallenged, the longer that we say, oh, our fight is done, we can move on, we have a pride week, we're cool, we let our guard down, I think, in a lot of ways. The left is not very well organized these days, unfortunately, and so there's not a whole lot of opposition and strong fights for the public services and community supports that we need to actually counter that. I think a lot of the people that are supporting these guys right now are, quite frankly, lost and terribly confused, and that could have been solved a long time ago if we hadn't gutted our schools and healthcare systems, and we had mental health supports in place, and we had smaller class sizes, and we had smaller neighborhoods so we could actually get out of the house and talk to people easily. Having a pandemic in that environment would not have been as hard as it would have been now.
A really interesting interview. Emily Quayle. I also spoke with Alex Silas from PSAC, the Union's National Capital Region VP. So I love to see the intersection between labor militancy and supporting these pro LGBTQIA plus social movements. That's really vital. That's going to be the way that these movements are going to be protected moving forward, right? Because we can't rely on the state to protect these communities, you know? But through militant organizing and through the affiliation with labor power as well, that's where these communities can be protected outside of the state.
like people up a bit.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's beautiful to see this sort of support for the 2S LGBTQ+ community in Ottawa. Time and time again, when trans and queer folks are under attack in the city or being targeted by the far right, we see the community in Ottawa rising up and far outnumbering the far right. And I think that's a beautiful thing, that sort of community engagement from our neighbors here in Ottawa, from across community activism, from across the labor movement, seeing that sort of solidarity. And I think a lot of this was woken up during the 2022 convoy occupation, where a lot of people realized that if we don't mobilize and get organized to support our communities through attacks from the far right, we can't let them just walk all over us. So it's great to see this, and a lot of this organizing, like one of the key groups that organized this is Community Solidarity Ottawa, that emerged from organizing counter-protests against the convoy and organizing community relief efforts during the convoy. So it's great to see that organizing happening and Ottawans standing up to be loud in support of the 2S LGBTQ+ community. So yeah, it's great to see so many people here.
And I've noticed there's a couple of, because I was covering the convoy, there's a couple of familiar faces. Is that there's sort of, I guess, the community woke up because the convoy sort of woke up that other side of it. Is that, do you feel like that's...
I mean, I might be one of those familiar faces. I think the convoy made people realize that there was a need for an organized coalition in Ottawa of community groups, of the labor movement, and of just neighbors who want to see the city be a more equitable place, a safer place, a more inclusive place. And to accomplish that, we need people to get involved. People power works, and this is an example of this. And yeah, it's just really beautiful to see so many neighbors coming out to support building a more equitable and inclusive city. Yeah.
How does it organize it right on the edge of like 3 public schools?
Concerned. It really raises doubts about a group that I think it goes without saying, but it's a group that is literally targeting children. How can anybody support that, right? This is a group that is going out of its way to target children.
They're saying the same thing.
Unsafe. I think it's disgusting. It's incredibly disappointing.
Talk about all the accusation, like we talked about on like a geopolitical level, all the accusations being an admission, and it's the same thing here on a domestic level too, isn't it? We're accusing the LGBTQIA plus community of targeting kids or grooming kids. It's literally an admission for them as well. You know, they're the ones that are targeting kids. They're the ones advocating kids being taken away from their parents and violating this sacred right of parents to raise their kids however they want, which they apparently believe in. You know, it's the same kind of concept. You know, these attacks also doubling as admissions to their own behavior.
And, you know, especially since these far-right groups use the Canadian flag as their symbol, I think that's incredibly disappointing too, and disgusting to have perverted that symbol of national pride into a symbol of hate. And yeah,
Alex.
It's just incredibly
Alex, it's what it always was.
Targeting children, but again, it's reassuring and empowering and great to see that the community is coming out to say, no, we're going to protect kids in our community. We're going to make sure kids feel safe.
You'll even see convicted pedos as voices among these reactionaries for sure, or like the seemingly nonstop barrage of people that are being caught abusing kids or caught with child pornography, and you're just looking at their Facebook and their obsession with this grooming panic is right there. Or people like Matt Walsh, who have defended the Catholic Church from accusations of pedophilia, who talk about like child brides and how child brides should be like a part of our society. You know, it's the same fucking thing. No, I know, irate lump. He's trying to reach normies, and I'm not gonna give too much shit to Alex Silas, who's a fucking union organizer who's out there standing with this important social movement. I'm not gonna give him too much shit for not making that connection with the Canadian flag, but you know.
We're going to make sure kids are able to be who they are and be comfortable in their own skin, and we're going to show that their fellow Ottawans, that their neighbors, fellow people in the community support these kids. Yeah.
And can you just spell out your name and your title? With
I think we lost Emily. We're gonna have to find her again.
Just so I can
over here. Okay.
It's a natural. Rex Cool Guy says it's a natural consequence of viewing children as property, and that's absolutely right. But like I was saying, they don't think that queer parents should have the same kind of rights. Like they don't think gay or lesbian or queer or trans parents should be able to talk to their kids about these issues. They view children as property, but only specifically under this like heteronormative nuclear family version, like a Christian influenced version of the family, and only in that context. And they think they view that they should have these like complete rights over a child's upbringing because they do view them as property, but they still don't apply that right to queer or trans parents. It goes to show their hypocrisy. It's useless pointing out hypocrisy for these folks. Obviously it doesn't actually matter, but I think it's still worth having these discussions though and pointing this shit out. The Billboard Chris Josh Alexander protest has begun moving toward the counter protester. So I'm guessing I'm picking up that Billboard Chris is like, yeah, he's a father of 2 daughters against gender ideology. He appears on Tucker. He's been a big part of this like trans panic, this grooming panic. I'd be interested to know how old his daughters are. I wouldn't be surprised if they were like adult. You're seeing that as well. This idea, like taking away the agency, not only from kids, but from adults. I saw there was a piece in the UK. It might've been in the Daily Mail itself the other day that was talking about this like detransitioner, and was like, it was suggested that like they were basically as a child totally just given the okay to totally change their gender, and then just like they regretted it and had to detransition again, and leaving out this entire context that they began this process when they were like 23. They went through years and years of like therapy and consultations and going through this hugely complicated and bureaucratic process in order to happen. And then when they were like 33, they wanted to detransition, and they were framed in the UK press as being like this innocent child that didn't know any better. It's pretty fucking amazing. So this is like his Stu's covering some of this Billboard Chris protest.
Guys, we're at the front of the line. It looks like they're getting ready here to march. The line is being formed. The front of the line is being formed.
Christ is king. Hey teacher, leave our kids alone. Using a fucking Pink Floyd fucking lyric. That's hilarious as well. Deliver us from evil. Stop grooming kids. Revolver.news. Canada first. Christ is king. And you're talking about LGBTQIA plus people grooming kids. Fucking Jesus Christ. Losers. Who's this? Like, do these people have kids? Who's this guy? He looks like he's fucking 18 years old. And I think, Lodain, what you just said is a really interesting point as well. This obsession with mutilation, mutilating kids, but are completely okay with like carrying on the totally normalized process of literally mutilating intersex kids at birth and forcing them into this gender binary that literally goes against their biology, for all this obsession these people have with biology and genitals and what your genitals mean about your personage. It's completely ridiculous. Did he have a Confederate flag? Jesus Christ, these people are absolutely pathetic. No, that's not the Confederate flag, though. Although I don't doubt that many of these people view the Confederate flag with as something important that they should uphold. Yeah, it's like, it's a Union Jack, which is equally as pathetic, I guess. Yeah, it's probably a provincial flag. Adults are cheering on these kids to encourage them to stomp on these pride decorations that had been ripped off a tree. And that's grooming kids. That's grooming kids into a hate movement, which of course they're okay with. Jay. Yeah, they're doing their part. The very specific Christian overtone to a lot of the protesters' chants, though there are a number of Muslim families present on that side as well.
Repent and turn to Jesus Christ for full salvation and remission of your sins.
This kid's like 15 years old.
You can count on me and have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
Hey ho ho TRRS drums.
Thank you, Subscription Steve, for the 18 months Tier 1. I appreciate that, Subscription Steve. Only 6 months away, Steve. Only 6 months away from the highly elite, highly exclusive, shimmering golden 24-month, 2-year TRRS sub badge. Yeah, they want to be American so bad they had to copy the MAGA hat.
Have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
Jay, thank you for the gifted. Thank you for the gifted sub. A flub tax. It's a flub slub. Thank you for that, Jay. Thank you for the gifted sub. Very much appreciated. Protesters seem to be retreating. A few stragglers remain.
Yeah.
I really love to see that, honestly. Got completely overshadowed, completely outnumbered by the people in the actual community coming out to defend their kids and to defend LGBTQIA plus rights. And these protesters, these reactionary protesters, got completely drowned out and driven off by them, which is really cool to see.
Yeah.
And having fun in the playground. I mean, that's why we're here.
Oh, here's Billboard Chris.
Find true happiness is by getting puberty blocking drugs, cross-sex hormones, and surgeries. That's nonsense. We can tell you people just as they are, but they want to do something
Loser.
to modify the body.
And Stephen Lecce, conservative, so-called conservative education minister in Ontario, has overseen the radical expansion of gender ideology in the schools. What's your message to Stephen Lecce, the education minister, and also the federal...
Find true happiness.
Very interested to know how old that guy's actual kids are. And then we just have the Ottawa police coming through. The first arrest seems to be from the counter-protester side. Person was wearing a rainbow mask and carrying a trans flag. Of course, that's where the arrests are happening. You see the police fulfilling their basic function here of protecting these reactionary protesters, just as they did during the Ottawa convoy. You know, but of course they need more money. Of course we need to make sure they have more money to deal with these kinds of things.
What happened to the love? I thought you guys were peaceful. Nothing but love. Hey! What's the matter? You don't want to see people? What happened to the love? I thought you guys were peaceful.
Fucking asshole. Protesters are back, and the counter-protesters' faces trying to provoke a reaction. And yeah, and then you see Joel Harden, Ottawa MP. This is a response to Luc Lebrun's post here, where these protesters got moved away and just stand in the middle of a residential street, freaking out. Then yeah, you have Joel Harden here, who got punched in the face. And you know, Joel Harden, like a really cool guy, a really progressive member of parliament. And we can talk all day about like the NDP not being good enough on a number of issues, not being progressive enough, having bad foreign policy, absorbing social energy of social movements. All that we can say all those things about the NDP, but utmost respect for Joel Harden to actually show up to these events in his community to protect LGBTQIA plus kids and trans kids especially, who are like the focal point of this, and being punched for it. And you actually have people like right-wing journalists basically just calling him a pedo, just for showing up to support his community and supporting pride and showing up this way. And I hope that he sues the shit out of some people. He absolutely should. Like you see this guy, Mark Slepinski from Toronto99.com. Like, this is so fucking unhinged. He just shows up and in his video and this, or his piece on this, pedophile NDP gets punched for supporting child grooming. Like, I really do hope that Joel Harden sues the absolute fucking piss out of this guy. You know? And it's just it's disgraceful how quickly this has like become totally normalized on this kind of far right, where you have Joel Harden showing up to show support for trans kids in his community, or the LGBTQIA plus community, and gets attacked, and it gets framed by this motherfucker Mark Slepinski for Toronto 99 as pedophile NDP gets punched for supporting child grooming. Slipinski seems a little bit defamatory to me as well. Slipinski also has been tweeting nonstop about Olivia Chow being a CCP agent. I don't doubt it. I don't doubt it. I do not doubt it. I hope Joel Harden sues the fucking shit out of this guy. I mean, it seems like a pretty clear-cut case to me of defamation. I think that's pretty much meets the definition of defamatory. Looks like Slepinski needs a Punchinski. Of course, I would never advocate for anyone being a victim of violence, but I'm not gonna stop you from talking about it. And like, we really do need to push back on this growing trend of people from the kind of like anti-imperialist movement who are equating the ways that like imperialism is pink-washed, like the way that NATO and other imperialist institutions use support for gay rights as a way to advance their imperialist agenda, with supporting these communities of people like where we live. And I think it's really disgusting, I think, how some people who might otherwise have decent takes about imperialism or foreign policy are repeating this line. And you're seeing this coming. This is like the Russian chauvinist line, basically. This idea about gender and being like this tool of the liberal establishment, or this tool of imperialism. And that needs to be fought against. And I noticed here this Twitter account, which I've never seen comment on any of these issues. This Twitter account, Uphold Reality, that shares a lot of, I think, important content about imperialism and supporting like the Bolivian revolution and supporting Lula and China and all these things, and then tweeting shit like this: the Western left's political project has been reduced to gender-bending children under the ever-expanding umbrella of NATO. Like, this is just a nonsensical position, and it's fucking reactionary and disgraceful. And the idea that people are, that might advance these kind of important ideas about imperialism or foreign policy completely undermine their entire message by failing this basic test of not understanding the way that these rights are weaponized. They're weaponized by NATO. They're weaponized by the U.S. government or the Canadian government to enforce imperialism on other nations. And it's so easy to just support the queer community where you live when it's under this kind of assault, and also to be an anti-imperialist. I do it, and people in this community do it every single day. And that these people now, and like the LaRoucheites, the patriotic socialists, whatever it is, that Jackson Hinkles or the Haases of the world or whatever, they're all getting on board this as well. And this anti-pride, anti-trans panic, it's disgraceful, and it's fucking gross. It's grotesque that the trans community is under this attack right now, and that these motherfuckers can't see that, and they can't separate the idea. They can't separate the way that these rights are weaponized, that LGBTQIA plus rights are weaponized to advance an imperialist agenda. Yeah, and I agree with that, Johnny. If you're going to engage in transphobia, especially now, like, not that there's any discrepancy, but when there's this concentrated attack from the reactionary imperialist state on trans people here today, to contribute to that, there's just no excuse for it. The gray zone people are going down that road. Like, there's so many people that are going down that road that maybe at one point might have had views or advanced ideas that I find important. They're all falling in line on this kind of thing, and it's really fucking grotesque. Do they think queer folk only exist in the West? Like, seriously, it's like, and again, you should be able to understand the ways that these rights are weaponized, and the way that imperialism or Zionism is pink-washed. You see that kind of pink-washing of Zionism happening all the time in Israel, and we can point that out, and we can call it out, without contributing to the trans panic or advancing this reactionary agenda here. I don't understand what the fucking difficulty is with these people just being completely incapable of doing this. It's fucking ridiculous. Yeah, the gray zone, the Midwestern marks flirting with it, the culture. Yeah, we were talking about Hassan Ali, I think on your stream as well. Yeah, for sure. It seems to be affecting a lot of people. And again, I just don't see how it's so fucking hard to be anti-imperialist and support LGBTQIA plus communities. And just look at Cuba. Look at Cuba. Yeah, or Xiangyu as well. Like that's a lot of people are going down this path, and it's inexcusable. It's totally inexcusable. Like I said, it's really easy to understand how these things are being weaponized to advance an imperialist agenda. And this kind of bullshit that this account's tweeting here is not in any way helping that. And yeah, look at Cuba's extremely progressive and pro-LGBTQ plus family policies that they're putting in place right now. I don't understand how people don't square that circle. They are right-tailless. Yeah. Yeah, it is a fash pipeline. Anyway, this shit has to be shut down. I wanted to make sure I mentioned that before we sign off. And I do have to get going soon. I got to go get going to pick up my kid from school soon. Glad we could spend some time focusing on this. It's important now during Pride Month, but it's important at all times as well to focus on this and to make sure that we stand with the LGBTQIA plus community while also being against imperialism. See how easy that is? It's easy to do both. It's really simple. It's really simple to support the LGBTQIA plus community when it's under attack and also be against imperialism. It's really easy. So I genuinely don't really understand how people keep failing this basic test, but they are. So let's fucking figure it out. I don't know. I would like to give one final plea for anybody that has been watching the stream. If you support the work that I do on here, if you enjoy the commentary, or if you enjoy this community, please, if you can, subscribe to TRRS. It costs $5 per month. It's completely free of charge with an Amazon Prime account. Every little bit helps me keep this content on the air. It helps me keep doing this show every day, which I absolutely love to do. But it can't continue without the extremely generous support of the TRRS community. And we are very close to the sub goal as well. 1 or 2 generous chatters could, in theory, get us to the sub goal. It's right there. It's within grasp. It's within reach. It's funny that the other thing they normally don't like is land back. Yeah, exactly. And it's still you see how you're still in that movement advancing this reactionary agenda.
Talk you through all this.
They're against colonialism, except the colonialism in the country that they fucking live in and benefit from. They want to protect these groups that are marginalized by imperialism, but they don't want to protect marginalized communities in the communities where they live. Donnie Durr, thank you for the 1 entire year of Prime. Thank you, Donnie Durr, for that. I really appreciate that. Thank you. Happy 1 year anniversary. You get a new 1 year sub badge as well. Thank you, Donnie Durr. We have any other takers, folks? We have any other takers? Again, 1 extremely generous chatter could, in theory, could get TRRS across the finish line today. So very close. Do I need to put on a music thing and try to encourage people that way? Is that what I need to do? What about if I do this? Is this worth a measly 5 gifted subs?
You can count on me. You're gonna have good old Rob to talk you through all this. You've just become an elite member of the Friendship Triangle.
Top Scruffy. I love it. Top Scruffy, thank you for the 26 months, tier 1. I really appreciate that, Top Scruffy. And for the 5 gifted subs, that's what I'm talking about. You came through, Top Scruffy. You saved the day. Thank you so much, Top Scruffy, for that. I really, really appreciate it. Thank you. Anybody else would surely know. It's hard to sing this one. I'm always tempted, but it's very hard. And then you have the modulation there as well, which trips people up. Maybe the best song ever written, honestly. It's quite possible. It's quite possibly the very best song ever written, this one. I bet Hildy might be talking about this kind of similar subject today, so I think that'll be a good place to raid. We love our friend Hildebeest, who has stopped by the chat earlier. Please give Hildy my regards. Thanks to everyone for tuning in today. It was a great stream. I appreciate you all for watching. I really appreciate all the support, everyone that was able to support the stream today. Thank you so much to all of you. I really, really, really appreciate it. I'm on a stone kick. I watched Nixon over the weekend. It's great. It's so good. Nixon is so good. I just actually noticed that it was the 1-year anniversary of when I went to see Oliver Stone last year in Quebec City, which was so fantastic. Thank you, Johnny. I really appreciate that. Thank you. And we'll hook up again soon. In a professional capacity, not like a, you know. Nixon is so good, though, absolutely.